Good evening. Welcome to the February 19th, 2024 Troy City Council meeting. I believe we have Reverend Dr. Tara Gay from Big Beaver United Methodist Church. She is not here, actually. So please rise for the invocation and remain standing for our Pledge of Allegiance. We give you thanks, Father in heaven, for the blessings of this day, and we ask that you continue to bless all of us here at Troy City Hall this evening, throughout our entire city, nation, and world. We ask that you be mindful of all that are suffering here in Troy, and again throughout the state, country, and world, and be with everyone in their time of need as they request your help. And if they are unable to ask for your help for any reason, please guide them and protect them as you see fit as well. Let's take a moment of silence and mindfulness for all the troubles that have come to all of us individually and collectively, and take a minute to just reset ourselves. We recognize that there are many faith traditions here in the city of Troy, and we ask that you continue to bless us regardless of those faith traditions and those practicing them. Forever in your peace, we ask. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Not sure how we managed to have our flags waving like they're outdoors, but that's very interesting. We call to order our Troy City Council meeting of February 19th, 2024, and ask for the roll call from Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Here.
Councilmember Brooks?
Here.
Councilmember Chamberlain-Krenga?
Here.
Councilmember Chanda?
Here.
Councilmember Gunn?
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Here.
All present this evening. First up, we have certificates of recognition and special presentations. We have 3 this evening. The first 2 I will be leading, and they're service commendations for some amazing people who have recently retired from the city of Troy. So I'll do C1 first, which is a service commendation for Deputy Fire Chief Paul Firth, and I'll ask Paul to meet me down at the podium. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
All right. You want yours or Paul Trosper's?
Mine.
We only retire Pauls from the city of Troy, apparently. All right. Paul, it's really an honor to have you here this evening. I'm glad you decided to come. You've been a big part of our city's history for a long time in wonderful ways, and I'm sad that you've retired, but I'm really happy that you have for your sake, and I know your family probably is too, to have a little more of you. So I'm going to read this service commendation into the record because I think it's an important part of your story and hear what you did at the city of Troy, and I hope everyone listens very well. So again, this is a service commendation for Deputy Fire Chief Paul Firth. Whereas on December 21st, 1987, Paul Firth began his volunteer service with the Troy Fire Department at Station 1. He was selected as Station 1 Member of the Year in 2008. He served as a volunteer in Troy until December 31st, 2012. Paul was then hired by the Troy Fire Department on August 13th, 2001 as a fire staff lieutenant. He was promoted to Assistant Fire Chief and Fire Marshal on February 6th, 2021. His title was changed to Deputy Chief on July 1st, 2022. And whereas for many years, Paul was the Fire Department training officer and facilitated the Firefighter Academy. Once joining the staff, Paul also joined the Oakland County Hazardous Materials Response Team, where he became an invaluable member and eventually a team leader. Because of Paul's expertise in hazardous materials, he then transitioned from training to the Department Hazardous Materials Inspector, where he worked with businesses on a daily basis. Whereas Paul has received numerous commendations during his career in Troy. He received 2 unit commendations in 2008 for meeting 100% of the fire department's training objectives for 2 consecutive years, and in 2012 for his role in an extrication incident to stabilize and lift a vehicle to free a victim on Coolidge and one on East Wattles. Paul received 4 Merit Service Awards in 2009 for dedication and commitment to fire department goals of professionalism, humility, honor, and integrity. In 2011, for work at the Sunnymead Apartment structure fire, in 2013 for the second alarm structure fire on Park Street, and in 2014 for the Canterbury Square structure fire. And whereas Paul received 2 departmental unit citations in 2021 for his role in a structure fire involving a 67,000-plus square foot industrial building and a fire involving a 14,000-gallon fuel hauler on northbound I-75 south of Big Beaver, and 2 in 2017 helping to control a multi-residential structure fire at Northfield Hills condominiums and a single-family residential structure fire on High Lane. And whereas Paul retired from the city of Troy on January 5th, 2024, and will now enjoy more time with his wife Lisa, daughter Alyssa, sons Mike and Dave, and daughter-in-law Chelsea, as well as traveling, fly fishing, and enjoying the opportunities provided by a planned retirement. Now, therefore, be it known that the mayor and city council of the city of Troy take this opportunity to express their appreciation to Deputy Fire Chief Paul Firth for his professionalism and his many contributions to the Troy Fire Department for the betterment of our community. And be it further known that the mayor and city council of the city of Troy, city management, and the citizens of the city of Troy extend wishes of prosperity, good health, and happiness to Paul during his well-deserved retirement years. Paul, this is presented this 19th day of February 2024. It's signed by myself as the mayor, and all members of our city council have signed it. I congratulate you, and thank you so much for all your service. Say a couple words? Oh, come on. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, had nothing prepared, but thanks, Ethan. Actually, thank you to all of council, city management. Let's see. A lot of good words were said, but really, this was a wonderful career. It is if God brought me to the city of Troy and the Troy Fire Department, whereas a lot of good things were done, but I did enjoy every minute of it. Like I said, didn't plan anything here. And I would do it all over again. It was a great career. So thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Paul Trosper, you better be ready to say something too, because now you know that's coming. C2 is the service commendation for Water and Sewer Operations Manager Paul Trosper. All right, Paul. All right, well, I have a service commendation for you as well to talk about your amazing career here in the city of Troy, and I'd be my honor to read this proclamation into the record here and to share your story with everybody. Okay? Sure. All right, bear with us. All right, this is a service commendation for Water and Sewer Operations Manager Paul Trosper. Whereas Paul Trosper grew up in Pontiac, Michigan, and graduated from Pontiac Northern High School. He served in the United States Army from 1978 to 1984 in the Corps of Engineers as a heavy equipment operator. He was stationed at Fort Carson, Colorado, Kitzingen, Germany, and Fort Benning, Georgia. And whereas Paul began his career with the city of Troy on January 26, 1987, as an equipment operator 1 in the water division. He was promoted on October 24, 1994 to equipment operator 2 in the water division. And whereas Paul was promoted to superintendent of water and sewer on May 9, 2015, on July 1, 2016, Paul's title was changed to water and sewer operations manager. During his career with the city of Troy, Paul participated in the Troy Safety Committee to promote a safe work environment. He also received multiple safety awards from the Safety Committee for safe work performance and received recognition from the city manager's office for a positive attitude and being an inspiration to his colleagues. And whereas in 2005, when Paul was the coach for the Troy tapping team, they took 5th place at Nationals in San Francisco, and in 2006 took 5th place at Nationals in San Antonio. When he started at the city of Troy, Big Beaver, Crooks, Livernois, and Long Lake were all 2-lane roads. Wow. Working with an exceptional and dedicated team, being part of the growth this city has experienced, and helping to build the city are what Paul is most proud of. And whereas Paul retired from the city of Troy on January 19th, 2024, after 36 years of dedicated service, many commendation letters in his employee file, and the utmost respect from the Troy employees, city council, residents, and the Troy business community. And whereas Paul will now enjoy more time with his wife Tina, son Aaron, daughter Elena, son-in-law Jordan, and granddaughters Ellie and Holly, In retirement, Paul has not made definitive plans, but he wants to continue to be involved in off-road motorcycling, a hobby he has been doing for most of his life. Paul doesn't race anymore, but he still promotes and organizes races and non-competitive events. Now, therefore, be it known that the mayor and city council of the city of Troy take this opportunity to express their appreciation to the city of Troy Water and Sewer Operations Manager Paul Trosper for his professionalism and many contributions to the city of Troy for the betterment of our community. And be it further known that the mayor and city council of the city of Troy, city management, and the citizens of the city of Troy extends wishes of prosperity, good health, and happiness to this Paul during his well-deserved retirement years. Paul, this proclamation is presented this 19th day of February 2024. Again, it's signed by myself as mayor and all members of our city council. I congratulate you and thank you so much for all of your years. Now you have to. Now you have to, right?
No, I really want to say that the honor of working here was great. I couldn't think of a better place to have a career. And I want to thank all of you for everything. It's been, like I said, I couldn't think of a better place to have a career. And I thank everyone.
We still have a water tapping team? Feels like we. Oh, those presentations were a lot of fun early in my council career. So. Since they're retired, they can leave when the meeting's just started. Next up is C3. It's the Avondale Youth Assistance Annual Update, and that'll be presented by Michael Kaziak, the chairman.
Sorry.
There he is.
I had to,
He was busy congratulating, yeah.
you know, it brings back old times because I actually was on the hazmat team with him. I retired in 2010 from the city of Auburn Hills and the police department there. Let me just say thank you for allowing me to be here for a couple reasons. And I originally put this presentation together. I hope you kind of follow along. But then I found out that I only got 5 minutes, so we are going to really have to go through this real quickly. So I'm going to try and do my best. And if I start stuttering and stammering, then just hopefully you'll get the message off of the presentation. So I come before you for a couple of reasons. Number one, I come to say thank you very much for all the support that you guys have given us over the years with the Avondale Youth Assistance Program. And second of all, to thank you for the support and for the obviously the funding of our helping us with it. For those of you, I know there's a couple of new faces here. So for those of you who don't know, Youth Assistance is a community-based program whose mission is to strengthen youth and families. The idea is for us to take these kids that are sitting on the fence and to bring them onto our side of the fence instead of letting them go over. The program's been around for 60 years, started with the Judge Moore back in Hazel Park and many years ago. We are 501(c)(3). There's 26 organizations. Every single school district in Oakland County has a youth assistance, and you are fortunate, or we are fortunate, to have Troy as part of ours, only because we have 4 sponsors. We have the City of Auburn Hills, we have the City of Bloomfield Township, we have the City of Rochester Hills, we have the City of Troy, and then Avondale School District as well. So we have many opportunities to get support and benefits from us. I come here today and I give a special thank you to Chief Frank Nasty, who is he supports our program. The funding for us from Troy comes through the police department, and we're grateful for that. And we also have Officer Brian Jones, who is a phenomenal liaison for us. So we are grateful in so many ways for the city of Troy. I also want to welcome, as you can see, we want to welcome a couple of new people. Carol Moreland is one of our, she is currently our vice chair, and she's on the City of Rochester Hills Council. And then Matt Lucas is our secretary to our executive board, and he is actually a school board member with the with the school district, and he does special education. Some of the things that we want to talk about is our annual student recognition. In years past, if you've been there, it has been just a huge program where we've had just hundreds of kids. And it got to the point where we decided that we needed to scale it down. We didn't want that because it felt like it was just a factory going through an assembly line, and that we weren't recognizing the children for what they were, the students that they were for. So last year, we ended up scaling it down to 7 recognized, 11 kids had an opportunity to really embellish in these children for them to see and know. And we're not talking about the scholars. We're not talking about the Rhodes Scholars. We're not talking about these kids that are going on to big universities. We're talking about students who are, again, on the borderline. We're talking about students who need help and who have just either through their community, through the school, through their teachers, have just helped lift them and pick them up. And these are the children we want, our students we want to recognize. This year, our program is going to be April 24th. The program will be at the upper elementary school or middle school in Rochester Hills, and our invitations are going to be coming out shortly. So we're looking from grades 6 to 12 to recognize. And if you have anybody that lives or goes to school in the district, please, 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 we always welcome that. We have a program. One of the things that we have done, and our philosophy, at least in Avondale, has always been that when we start a program, if the school district loves the program and sees the benefit of the program, then our goal is to get the school to take it over. And we had a program called CAMP, K-A-M-P, which was Kids Academic Mentoring Program. And it was basically an after-school tutoring program. And we started it at the Deerfield School District, and then due to logistics, we ended up moving it to Graham last year. Well, last year we had 23 students, and the program was just absolutely moving along very well. Graham got so embraced in it, they got so excited about it, that now they've got 35 students. There's a waiting list to have these students, and the district has done exactly what we wanted them to do, which was take over the program. So now we have opportunity and freed up some finances to actually help do some better, bigger and better things. We had a back-to-school event with 30 students where we actually give out backpacks, give out some clothing, give them an opportunity to go to school feeling respectful, and with some personal hygiene products as well. We did 25 students. We coupled with because of Auburn Hills being in the two school districts, the Pontiac School District and the Avondale School District, we paired with the Pontiac Youth Assistants. So we had 25 students that we actually did a Christmas shop with a hero, and we had 25 students from Pontiac School District as well. We support Blessings in a Backpack. And then one of the things that Matt Lucas, who is our secretary, he's also a teacher, but he started a program called Circle of Friends. And the idea of Circle of Friends is that there are a lot of students in the district that I hate to call them loners, but they're just they don't know where they fit, they don't have a lot of friends. And so the idea is to put this program together where these students can come into a room, they can sit quietly, they can read a book, they can do homework, they can interact with other students. And so we put this program together, and it really has been a big success, on top of the fact that they did a bowling fundraiser over the Christmas holiday, and it was a huge success. And they did it at Bolero Lanes only because Bolero Lanes is a co-sponsor of one of the radio programs that Matt Lucas also does. The guy is just amazing. We had some families. We had actually 4 families that were able to enjoy not only a Thanksgiving dinner, but a holiday dinner, compliments of Meyer and the Moose, or Costco and the Moose Lodge. And then we've started a new program, and I don't know how it's going to work, but I'm really kind of curious. And it's a program called Screenagers. And if you get a chance, Google it. Screenagers is designed by Dr. Delaney Rustin. She's a primary care physician as well as a documentary filmmaker. And it's just amazing, and it's an award-winning program. It probes family life and depicts the messy struggles over social media, video gaming, academics, and addictions, and a way to navigate through this digital world. So we are in the process of putting it on. It's going to be early May at the high school, and we're just kind of excited about it, and we're hoping that if we get a good audience, then we'll do it in the fall as well to have a second run. But we also have assistance with the Auburn Hills Police Department and the Oakland County Sheriff's Department, who will be there to answer questions on anything that parents may have some concerns about. So we're kind of excited. Like I said, it's a pilot program, but we're really excited. The other thing we're excited about is we partnered with the Avondale School District on a program called Breathe for Change. And again, the idea is that these students are coming and they've got so much time or such a short time to go from one class to another. They're going from math to physics or gym to English. And the students get so frazzled. And the idea is that the teachers then start learning how to actually interact with the students to where they start saying, okay, we're going to stand up and we're going to do maybe we'll do a little yoga, maybe some chair yoga or some standing type yoga. We'll do some breathing, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in. And the idea is to just get everybody back in a position that they can start to study and study effectively. And right now they've got, there's only a handful of teachers that have started a program. It's a 300-hour program that they have to do to go through this. So we actually helped them with some funding to be able to find more teachers to keep this program growing. Caseload. Talk a little bit about our caseload. Our caseloads, we have all kinds of behavioral issues, all kinds of different ages from age 5 all the way up to age 17. And they include anywhere from assault and battery, incorrigibles, drug possession, retail frauds, threatening behaviors at home, in school, disorderly conduct, could be a number of different things. And we're finding the average age of our referred casework kids or students is actually 12.2 years of age. And it just amazes me, and it keeps getting younger and younger and younger that these students are getting involved in that. So with that, to just give you some caseload numbers, in 2022, we had 90 cases at our just alone that our caseworker had to deal with from June 30th to July 1st. And currently, right now, since July 1st of 2023, we've had 73 cases. So our caseload is going up. It's not going down. Our caseworkers are very busy, and so we're always looking for programs to make sure that we can help get that done. Students are referred by parents, police, school administrators, and the courts. I didn't get a chance to send in a PowerPoint, which I would have loved, but the next slide is just one, just gives you who we are, our address, our phone number. So if somebody was interested in becoming a volunteer, we're always looking for it. I've been doing this since the year 2000. I started on both Avondale and Pontiac Youth Assistance Boards, and I just can't get the kid out of me. So it's such a wonderful program, and we've just been blessed to have the great support that we have. And then there's another one that just shows who our board of directors are and who are helping us in the program right now. So again, I don't want to take up a lot of your time. I appreciate you just giving me the opportunity to let you know what's going on and to say again, thank you for all the support that you give us and your continued support.
Thank you. I'll say we're so thankful for what the Youth Assistance does. Obviously, here in Troy and Avondale, and that northern portion of our city is affected and uses your service. And does anybody have any questions or comments other than thank you so much? And I love to hear that you've been doing it since 2000. That's a testament to who you are as a person to care so much to continue doing something so wonderful for our community.
Thank you. I will be back again. I do want to apologize because usually I try and come in the fall, but unfortunately due to grandchild in Phoenix and a wedding last year, I just couldn't make it. So I promise you I will stay closer for updates. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your time.
Have a good evening. Thank you for coming. That concludes certificates of recognition and special presentations this evening. We have no carryover items or public hearings scheduled, so we'll move on to public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. We have 2 people signed up this evening. As a reminder to those 2, the rules of procedure for City Council are clearly stated in the agenda packet and also online. You're limited to 3 minutes. You can speak directly to us as one body. It's not a back and forth question and answer period. It's an opportunity to address us. And we are given an opportunity to respond after if necessary. And with that said, I'll call our first member of the public from Troy, which is Deborah Luzecki.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Deborah Luzecki, and I come before you. I know you're going to be looking at the master plan again. And I am in no reflection trying to critique or criticize or be judgmental as far as what's going on with the master plan. But I've been here since 2008. I've lived through the 2008 plan that came, the ordinances came in 2011. Then right after that, we all saw what happened. Our planning meetings, our council meetings were jam-packed with people, all upset because of cluster building and three-story condos. I thought this time it would be nice to at least explore it a little bit deeper before we get that far. And I just don't want to see that happen again. The last time Brent and Ben were here, they talked about two-story abutting residential property. When I looked at the ordinances, it says 2.5 stories abutting residential property. I think that needs to be clarified. Maybe they've now dropped it again, and that would be interesting. The second thing is their neighborhood node is 1,000 linear feet from the corner. Ours isn't 1,000 linear feet. Does that mean it can be increased? And then second of all, it's not that we're against the neighborhood node, but what we were wanting is a little bit more detail and preserving as far as what we have there. And with that, I just want to say thank you. I also want to thank our attorney, Bloom. I really appreciate all the hard work you guys have put in with the gun ordinances and what you've done for our children. I'm a grandmother of a child from the Oxford High School, and I now see and watch that grandchild and his friends, what they still go through. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ms. Lasecki. Next up is Sheila Len Shomo.
Hello, Mayor. Hello, Council. I had to miss a couple meetings because of my work schedule, so I apologize for not being at the meeting before when the master plan was discussed. Sort of a part-time job to keep up on these things, but I did watch the video, and I really appreciated all the thoughtful comments that you guys had. It really felt like someone was in my corner. I know you guys are here to represent the residents, and I really felt that. So I just wanted to say that I'm usually not involved in city. This is the first time I'm seeing you guys in person, honestly, and I've been here 12 years. So I'm usually not involved, but I really appreciate it, and I think I'll be involved a little bit more from now on. I went back to I was involved in the walk and talks way back when they happened in 2018. I don't know whenever they happened, but a couple years ago. But at the time, I honestly didn't truly understand the impact of the master plan and this new development that Mr. Abatheria was proposing on our corner was sort of a wake-up call, and it was kind of at the same time that you guys were approving the master plan, so it all kind of connects, but it was a wake-up call as to how unclear some of it actually is for what we want our corner to be. And I'm in Node L, so that Square Lake, Livernois area. So I think we need to define Node L a little bit better to influence development on the corner, which also influences the development of the abutting neighborhoods. As we all know, they should influence each other. It should be developed together, not separately in a silo. I think the node is beneficial to keep control and limit high-impact development. What we may see as a fully developed corner, which I think we said at it was 2 meetings ago, but the last time we discussed the master plan, what we see as fully developed, I thought was fully developed 10 years ago, but it's not. It was not. There's been plenty of development since then, and I think developers' definition of development is even more than that. There's plenty of parking lots that are available for development that I see right now. So it truly is, we need to protect it from redevelopment and overdevelopment. So tonight, I am asking you to reject the master plan. I like the master plan, but I want you to reject it with a directive for the Planning Commission to re-review Node L. Just for a few reasons. The height issue, again, we have had a lot of 2.5 to 3-story buildings very close to the road. It gives it a very closed off feel. Is not the spacious feel that when you go into the actual neighborhoods abutting it, that's not the feeling that you get there. We were hoping for more 2-story would be the limit. A density perspective, there is no clear definition of what density was, and the Planning Commission really seemed to struggle with this when we were talking with Mr. Abatheria on the most recent development. The residents and the Planning Commission weren't even close on what a low density plan was, which is actually mentioned in the master plan. So a definition of what low density would mean would be helpful. And then the design, we really like that historical feel. We're not really there right now with current development, but any redevelopment, we would like to keep that. So we'd like to do it quickly because we're developing faster than we're regulating. So thank you.
Thank you. That concludes those that have signed up for public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. We do have an opportunity to respond now, but I would recommend we wait until we're discussing the master plan, if that's okay. Seems most efficient. Okay. We have no postponed items this evening, so we move on to regular business. First up is I-1, board and committee appointments. I have no mayoral appointments this evening, but there are 2 city council appointments, so I'll turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move 2 appointments for the Zoning Board of Appeals. I'd like to move Barbara Chambers and Jeffrey Forster, both as alternates for terms ending 1/31/2027.
Support. Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick, supported by Councilmember Hamilton, that we approve the reappointments of Barbara Chambers and Jeffrey Forster as the alternates to the Zoning Board of Appeals for the terms expiring January 31st, 2027. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Craig?
Yes.
Councilmember Chanda?
Yes.
Councilmember Gunn?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Yes.
Motion carries. We thank Mr. Forster and Ms. Chambers for their continued service. That concludes city council appointments this evening. We move on to I-2, board and committee nominations. I have no mayoral nominations this evening, and I don't believe city council has any nominations either. There's no closed session requested in I-3, so we move on to I-4, amendment to Chapter 98 Criminal Code, and that'll be introduced by City Attorney Lori Grigblum.
Thank you, Mayor. What you have before you is a proposed revision to our criminal code. There are a number of proposed revisions. Some of them are in connection with the firearms legislation, which the state legislature has passed and was effective as of Tuesday, the 13th. Some of the other items are the age for young persons to purchase tobacco was changed to 21, so that's reflected in this amendment as well. There have also been some cases that have required us to modify or clarify our criminal code. So we have presented this to council at the last meeting, and we would request that you approve it, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, City Attorney Bloom. Were there any questions? There were no questions submitted prior to
No.
the meeting in writing, right?
No, Mayor, there weren't.
Any questions now? Anyone like to move the resolution? Councilmember Brooks?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move I-4, amendment to Chapter 98 Criminal Code as printed in the agenda.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Brooks, supported by Councilmember Chamberlain Craig, that we approve I-4, amendment to Chapter 98 Criminal Code as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? Just thank City Attorney Bloom and City Administration for making these necessary changes to keep our ordinances current and in line with applicable state law. The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Craig?
Yes.
Councilmember Chanda?
Yes.
Councilmember Gunn?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes, motion carries. Next up is I-5, master plan adoption or rejection, and then as printed in the agenda packet, there are 2 competing resolutions, Resolution A and Resolution B. And, Community Development Director Brent Savedon will be coming forward.
We'll be a two-headed monster again this evening. We are before you January 29th. The item was before you was consideration of a draft master plan. There was no action taken. There was considerable back and forth, a lot of questions, comments, concerns. We left that meeting. Council was going to and did provide us with questions and direction for moving forward. We took the direction that was provided since January 29th and compiled it in 2 potential resolutions, one for adoption and one for essentially kicking it back to Planning Commission for further consideration, specifically related to 2 nodes. And with that very brief synopsis, we're here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Brent. I had asked, I see coming up for the current zoning map for the 2 neighborhood nodes in question. can't tell which one this one is. So that's Waddles and Crooks.
Yes.
Drive. And I know we have the other one as well. If it's easier to talk about them while they're up, they're available, is my understanding. Is that fair? So
Yes.
let's start with questions. Obviously, from a procedural standpoint, we should be asking questions now, and then we have to decide to move one of the two resolutions to have further discussion, I suppose, is the most proper way to do it. So if you have actual questions, let's start with those. Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah. To me, I've been mulling this over and over again, watching our last meeting, watching the previous planning commission meetings, trying to figure out the best path forward. Because as I said at the last meeting, I agree with what residents have said about these two nodes. I also agree, I do think keeping them as neighborhood nodes probably long-term is the best option, but for those two nodes, I do agree that I'd like to see more done. I think it requires in-depth studying, though, by the Planning Commission. And reading the old master plan, the new master plan, I have lots of notes about the differences. And the truth is, the new master plan has major differences in the nodes. I mean, really, the amount of text that's relevant to what will eventually go into the zoning ordinance isn't a lot, but the changes it brings are quite substantial. So I'm getting to my question, sorry. But the two paths forward I'm looking at is either approving the changes now, because I do think they're a positive step forward, and then immediately asking Planning Commission to in-depth look at those nodes and propose another amendment to the master plan as soon as possible, or to reject and send it back and then ask them to do that way. What would the timeline look for those two different options? Because that's what I'm struggling with, because I really would like the changes we have in here implemented. As far as I'm concerned, and I'll ask you to clarify that, is the current changes to the node will basically say that residential is a secondary use, and really residential is only allowed on second and third floor, where first floor has to be commercial, as far as I'm concerned. So the developments we've seen, like, what is it, Tisdale, or the ones at Crooks and Waddles, those by right would no longer be able to be done once the zoning ordinance changes are in place. So one, can you clarify what the changes in perspective of those nodes look like? And then what would those two paths forward look like as far as a timeline? If we were to prove this, but then immediately instruct, Planning Commission as quickly as possible, deep dive into those two nodes, how quickly can you get back another change? I know it may require another 63-day period, or when I read the state statutes as well, and I thought maybe a small amendment only needs 42 days. I'm not 100% sure on that. Whereas kicking it back to Planning Commission, if we reject, how long would that take? Because that would delay these really good changes too, and would expose us to more developments being accepted in the next few months that we don't want. So that was a lot. Do what you can with that. I can clarify if you need me to.
I heard two questions. I'll start with the timing one. The timing one, this is a unique situation. It's a first for me, but given that assuming the reasons for sending it back are really for the two nodes, for consideration of the two nodes, I'm assuming Planning Commission may establish a subcommittee, much like they did last time. They could turn that around in a relatively quick fashion. I don't believe that would trigger the 63-day review period, because I would defer to the city attorney on this, but given the scope of the revisions, I would want to have a public hearing at the Planning Commission level and a public hearing at City Council level, but I don't believe, especially given that these two nodes are internal to the city and not on the borders, it doesn't have to go to the county necessarily. It would be
if we did the reject and push it back.
If we did the reject, just focus on those two nodes and then come back, it would not trigger the 63-day. We would still have public hearings. That's the right thing to do, to be transparent. Versus, as you indicated, if you were to say, well, it's important, but let's adopt what we have, and then immediately start an amendment, that will trigger that we'll have to first inform all the communities that are involved in the 63-day review period. We have to first inform them that we intend to amend the master plan, then make the amendments, and then do the 63-day review period. So it's going to add some time. So it's going to be longer by at least 2 months.
But we would then implement the current changes now that we really want, and that would trigger the starting of the process of amending the zoning ordinance, right? Which is really the meat of everything, where really the policy meets the law. And the thing is, I feel like the two could go in parallel. If we adopt this tonight, we can immediately start the process of changing the zoning ordinance while in parallel working on the master plan. And then if we change the master plan in a few months, I don't think we need that much time for then the subsequent zoning ordinance amendments, right? So what I'm trying to visualize is how much is it really going to delay us if we adopt tonight, start a new amendment immediately, and then while at the same time working on the zoning? Because to me, this isn't the end, this is just the next step. The end game is the zoning ordinance amendment. So do you think if we adopt and start a new amendment, how much is that really going to delay the zoning ordinance? Because I don't think it would be much, but that's kind of what I'm debating right now. Because I want to get these changes in, because these are really good changes. And that was my other question, was could you summarize, what the changes are?
And I think I probably misspoke a minute and a half ago when I said it's 63 days longer. The fact that we're going to schedule a planning commission public hearing, which needs some time for notification, and as well as a city council public hearing, it's going to be more delayed, but it may not be 2 months, maybe less.
And a lot of that is on planning commission, because really they need to, 2/3 of them have to approve whatever they could tell us to pound sand for all we know. But I mean, we do appoint them, but they have 3-year terms. So, I mean, they unanimously voted for this. That's another thing, is like they could delay it too, and we have no power to do that. If they deliberate and can't come to a conclusion, it could get kicked around there as well. And that's another fear I have. And then my other comment was, other question was, what are the changes that the master plan as it stands now would do, even to the nodes that our residents came and spoke about? Because I think the changes already are substantial.
You can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Hamilton. Excuse me, I'm a little under the weather, so my voice is a little scratchy tonight. Yeah, so when the Planning Commission took on the task of looking at the nodes, it really went back to 2008 and what the intent of what the nodes are supposed to be. And so the language that you see in here really is a clarification of really being a location of mixed uses, not residentially focused, commercially oriented to serve the adjacent neighbors, and also serves a transition between higher intense uses right at the intersection and at the major mile roads versus transitioning further back within the sites or adjacent parcels or even the parcels of residential associated with it. So the intent is to soften up all of the intent language here to be more of that, what we intended to happen in 2008 that didn't happen. And then node by node, like we noted, we went through each node to kind of make sure that was integrated, not just in the intent statement for the nodes in general, but specifically for each node. For example, the node in question that we're talking about, one of them is the historic Troy Corners. There's a lot of conversation about preserving historic structures, making sure we do adaptive reuse. So we did try to take the character of each node and make sure we integrate it into the intent statement. But to your point, Mr. Hamilton, we're going to hopefully take this, I would call it softening of the node intent, and make that reflective in the zoning ordinance to actually make sure that we meet those transitions, meet those mixed land uses, and not maintain the residentially focused development that we've got. So that's the kind of the crux and the change, was to go back to what the original intent was, that maybe we've missed the mark on a little bit, and ensure we can do it through both the master plan and then eventually zoning. Thank you.
I have a follow-up to one of your questions, and before we go on to the next conversation. And I guess I need some expertise from a planning consultant, a planning director, a city manager who's a former planning director. Isn't it extremely inefficient of us to approve something telling you we're also going to tell you we want to change it right after we approve it? Doesn't that sound like what's wrong with government? And in all respects, I know where you're going with this, Councilmember Hamilton. I know what the intent is, but from a planning standpoint, for us to say, yes, approve this, but by the way, in 30 seconds, we're going to tell you we want to change it too. Like, I get the protective nature of it, but in the planning world, is that something you do, to approve it and then start the whole amendment process all over again? I mean, that just, to me, that seems, if you don't want to answer it, Brent, I understand.
No, I think respectfully, Councilmember Hamilton is playing like 3D chess. Like, the intent is kind of sort of the same. So I totally understand what the intent is. The intent is to adopt it so that we have positive action, but we'll get to the same place. So, but I think there's probably, I think at the end of the day, the goal is of Ben and I and city managers to get it right. And we're hearing from some residents and from some city council that we haven't quite got it right. So there is a part of me that thinks I totally understand where Mr. Hamilton's going. I think it's an innovative solution, but I think I'd rather err on the side of kicking it back to see if there's something that the Planning Commission can address relatively quickly, hopefully quickly. If not, we still want to get it right, and then come back and then do the adoption once, versus adopting it and knowing we're going to immediately amend it. There's an inefficiency there. It's like we're being efficient but creating an inefficiency at the same time. So, if that makes sense, I probably didn't.
And I should have led with, I completely know why you're proposing what you propose, because it's there are protections that we want in place as soon as possible. Although it sounds like maybe from the timing standpoint, it could be a little bit of a wash if we have to send out the Planning Commission, or if we started a full amendment process all over again with notification for public hearings and the 63-day submittal and allowing for comments again, when I'm assuming we've already been working on some, or we're at least prepared to get going on zoning amendments as soon as we're ready. I'm wondering if the time difference might not be that much. But I saw two hands shoot up over here quickly, and then I'll come back. Councilmember Chamberlain-Cranga?
Thank you, Mayor. So two questions. One, Councilmember Hamilton, you started kind of getting at that, and I want to kind of deep dive into that a little bit for you to unpack it. So my understanding, I thought this is always my understanding from kind of the planning geeks in my family, is that this is a Planning Commission document. We have the final say on it, but it is the work of Planning Commission. And so to what extent can we direct, say we want to work on these nodes, to what extent do we direct Planning Commission to make these changes? Because we can send it back, and my understanding is they could say, no, we don't agree, and we end up in a pickle. So what extent, I mean, my understanding was always we don't direct that process. We can give our input. So just if you can explain that to us a little bit more.
Well, I think the more clear the direction, the better. So the Planning Commission is very clear on what the concerns of City Council are. That's the quick answer.
And then what if they have an alternative view?
Well,
Attorney Bloom.
City Council has the ultimate authority for approving this. You have reserved the right to have final authority. So if the Planning Commission brings back something that is not acceptable to the City Council, then you go through the process again.
I know there's the what ifs if we send it back and forth, but I know the Planning Commission does want to work with this council and make sure that we all are on the same page, because they don't want to present a plan that you're not happy with and you feel uncomfortable. So I do think if given some clarification, maybe not direction, but clarification as to what this council wants, I do think this Planning Commission would work diligently to bring back something that they support and they think that you will support as well.
Do you have a second question, Rebecca?
I did. I actually had asked it last time, but we'll restate it again. I think the thing I also wrestle with is, yes, we can always tweak and get things better. But I think the difficulty was, my understanding when I asked the question last time, was that even if we make tweaks to Note L, that's not necessarily going to impact Abathera's development, because he got that development in at an earlier time during a different zoning ordinance around height. So I don't know, I mean, to what extent would this actually impact that particular development beyond, of course, the back and forth we can have with the PUD?
so is there a way to put this up on the main screen?
Asking the IT gods.
Imagine, if you will, that was on this screen. Well, you can see it fairly well. I just can't point to it. So if you see the neighborhood node, oh, here he comes.
Ask and you shall receive.
Yes. Thank you, Dave.
He just likes to have his moment in the sun. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dave. So the PUD, Planned Unit Development, or PUD application that is before us includes this portion of the neighborhood node right here, this little piece. I think it's 6.31 acres. And then the rest of the property is this. It's not zoned neighborhood node, it's zoned R1B. So the master plan update is related, but only secondarily. The PUD project is, most of that PUD property is not zoned neighborhood node.
We didn't review it under the neighborhood node zoning characteristics either, so it's a standalone PUD, regardless of what the adjacent zoning is to it.
But I think her question was related to the 3-story condominiums that were extended a couple times that are on that 6.3 acre, right? And even if we made that no longer a node, he still has approval to build the 3 stories on that lot. Is that
He does, yes.
right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I just want the residents to be aware of that. We can change this, but it may not change, unfortunately, and that's just, it's out of our control, so.
Councilmember Gunn.
I just want to walk through the step-by-step process here. If we rejected it, we send you back to Planning Commission with direction, suggestions. How long before they would focus only on those 2 nodes and then bring it back to us?
Mm-hmm.
So the time frame would be much quicker.
Yeah, potentially, we would need enough time to discuss the matter with the Planning Commission, decide what tack they want to take. When we went through the nodes, literally node by node, the Planning Commission created a subcommittee comprised of 4 members. I would anticipate they may do the same thing. That may take at least 1 meeting, maybe 2 meetings, hopefully just 1 meeting. Then bring that back to the Planning Commission for consideration, then schedule a public hearing to get input from the residents, and send that back to City Council.
2 months.
2 months, 3 months?
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Chanda, you had a question?
Yeah, one of the questions have been answered already. I think I was going to ask that 3-story development, that has been approved already, and that's maybe a question for City Attorney Lori Bloom, that even if we change the nodes, it's not going to affect that contract. Is that correct?
He does have the ability to proceed with the development since he was granted approval and it was extended, yes.
Okay. And then the second question is basically in terms of timing. I mean, if my intention is also similar to Councilmember Hamilton to approve it as it is, because question for the rest of the council, I don't think we have an agreement on what we are going to suggest to the planning, because we have ideas about what needs to be done, but I don't think we have a clear direction. Are we ready to give them a clear direction? And I know it's a question-answer session, it's not a discussion, but if we have to give a clear direction to planning, I don't think we have one. And number 2, it's a planning commission document, correct? I mean, they may not agree to that, and it may come back to us and we may reject it again, but there is no, I don't think going by our process, we can literally tell them what to change. Is that correct?
Well, I think the Planning Commission is following this very closely, and I can't speak for the Planning Commission, obviously. It's 9 appointed officials, but they, again, like Ben stated, I believe they want to work hand in glove with City Council, so they're paying attention, and, you've got concerns, and this is how it works.
Okay.
Councilmember Hoderick? Or Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick? Whatever. Ellen?
I want to start my question with first, I want to apologize to the 2 of you if last meeting I felt extremely confrontational, or like I was beating you up. I was seeking to represent our residents. And by way of background, the residents in this community, when they elected council members in 2019 in particular, when they knew we were doing a 5-year review, during that election season, they were vigilant about picking their candidates with their eye on making sure we at City Council they don't elect planning commission, they elect city council, represented their very real concerns about the nodes. These weren't political groups, they weren't parties, they weren't lone little neighborhoods. These were collective people that held town halls, meetings at their garages, in their neighborhoods, and really sussed out who they felt would best represent them. And two members here were on the ballot then and were elected. Two others were also elected at that time and have since moved on and have been replaced by the two gentlemen at that end of the table. And so, and the truth is, the city council only has really 2 times, right? When we send it out for public review and when it came back to us for final approval. It is our right by state law, and it is the expectation of people who elected us to really give this a good look-see. And I think it's very important, even if ultimately it didn't change and there was a determination that the nodes are best defined, let's get on to the zoning ordinances, we need to demonstrate that we were vigilant in representing people. These were really key in that election, and everybody's been patient for the 5-year review. And so I heard you then say last time, what is the specific direction? And there were 2 questions asked by residents, the residents here tonight, that came up. The 2.5-story versus 2-story question. I thought, first, could you take a second to address that?
Yeah, if one of us said 2 stories, it's 2.5 stories or 30 feet. Same height, maximum height as a single-family home.
As a single-family home. And then the 1,000 linear feet from the corner.
I don't know what she was referring to there.
Okay, so we can look into that maybe a little bit separately and get back with an answer on that. Okay, my 2, I don't know if these are specific thoughts on the nodes. With neighborhood node F, what I would specifically like the Planning Commission to consider is removing it now from the node back to single family. And to just consider that, to really consider the pros and cons and demonstrate that we've done that consideration. I'm sitting here with I'm not as knowledgeable as you guys and the Planning Commission, but my sense is that our residents really want to explore that. If we were not to do that, why wouldn't we? And how does it protect the residents? That's a specific, if I could come to a Planning Commission and stand at the microphone, which I can't because I'm on council, that would be my question. And I feel like that's a question residents are asking. I do hear residents starting to understand that the definitions in the node have been enhanced. And so my other specific question is, if it stays a node, are we comfortable we've put everything in the master plan language? Is there one more phrase we want to do? Could they give that another look with the experiencing we're having about the discussions, in particular with regard to density, because traffic is an issue. That was a huge part of your discussion on that at the last meeting, the stacking of traffic. It's for real. It's a safety and security issue. So, would we be confident that that language sets us up for when we do the zoning ordinance that we get where we want to be? With regard to neighborhood node L, again, you do hear where folks are they're seeing where the node makes sense and might actually do some protections at that neighborhood if the language is correct. Could we give it a second look, make sure, with all the discussions that have even gone on recently since that subcommittee first did its work, because it's been some time now, and there's been more experience with residents coming in. If Planning Commission had a chance to add an extra phrase or boost a word, or what would that be? And could they look at that? And and the node borders, looking at those and the size of them. Those are my specific thoughts that I've pondered on these. I too am frantic to get to our place that this is approved so we can get to the zoning ordinances. And I see the residents who are concerned nodding their heads. We do understand that. But I don't want to shortchange our role as a city council in the process. This is it. This is our moment to make sure and to demonstrate that we've really looked at it. I don't know if that's enough. I don't want to demand things. I want to ask the deliberations of those thoughts and ideas, and demonstrate that we've really looked at these two nodes as carefully as we can and we've comprehended. That's my specific direction. And in terms of planning commission could just reject, of course they could. That has never been an experience in my time, in all my years on council, that a planning commission isn't looking to lock arms with the elected body that is held accountable to we report to the residents. My experience has always been that the planning commission has understood that, has been more than willing. This is 99% there. Let's take the moment to really dot the i's and cross the t's on these two nodes, make our residents feel comfortable that we took the time to do so, so that then when we go into the zoning ordinance, that's my direction to the Planning Commission. That's what I'm looking for, is that our residents really did feel. And you guys in Planning Commission might feel like we already did that. Okay, if that's the answer that comes back, we've really drilled down. But I suspect if we give you a few more minutes and we give that subcommittee another chance to go back, would they do a little bit more now with some more months under their belt of dealing? I bet they would welcome the opportunity, and I would hope that that's how they would look at it, as an opportunity to get this better. Is that rambling specific enough?
There was no question there, Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick, but that's okay.
There were questions, and then,
There were questions, I know.
and I'm asking, is that the specific, when you're saying you need specific direction, that's what's floating in my head. Is that sufficient?
I believe it is, yes.
Okay, that's where I'm at.
So as a follow-up question to that then, there are two competing resolutions, and there's some specificity in Proposal B that says some of these things. Is the expectation that words like what Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick just stated need to be in a resolution to give the clear direction? Or I guess I'm a little confused on the process at that point. I'm looking at City Attorney Bloom.
So the resolution that is proposed for your consideration, it does give some broad parameters. Basically, the important thing is it's rejecting and sending it back and remanding it to the Planning Commission. And so with that, the Planning Commission, I suspect, will also have the benefit of at least a report of these conversations, if not an actual view of these conversations. And so, yes, I think that it is sufficient if that is council's direction. But again, there needs to be some consensus. So that is something that you really, I think that the Planning Commission would appreciate knowing if there's consensus.
Sure. Councilmember Brooks, did you have any questions now, or did you want to wait for discussion, or what was your thought?
I will wait for discussion, but I did have, I had a question that I asked of Attorney Bloom earlier, but I did think that the answer was helpful for me, and maybe just to say it out loud. I kind of asked about the ramifications of maybe removing the no designation for some of the establishments and projects that are already established. Like, what does that mean for those, buildings and businesses that are currently existing?
So again, there are two discussions, two layers here. There's the master plan, which is what's before you now, but if there's a change to the master plan, then what will inevitably follow is the change to the zoning ordinance. If there's a change to the zoning ordinance and it's removed from the neighborhood node, to something else, something that was developed as a neighborhood node would become a non-conforming use. So it'd be non-conforming.
And the consequences of that would be?
The consequences would be that they could not expand. So if there was a tear down, for example, then there would need to be compliance with the new.
Additional questions? Councilmember Chamberlain-Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. So the thing that I've been wrestling with a little bit, and I'll try to turn this into a question, is, so I was leaning towards what Councilmember Hamilton was proposing, just because I believe deeply in the work that's been put into this, and that there are protective elements that protect our residents. And I get really fearful, because the more time we wait, the more time you have an old master plan that people can, take action on. The question, I guess, would be is, I guess hearing that it may not take a lot of time, so even if we reject, take this back to Planning Commission, maybe that's just a month. I'm surprised that it might just be a month, maybe 2 months. Are there any projects in the works or things that you're aware of that, I don't want to say sneak in, but, could come in during that time that actually could, again, be detrimental or would be not in compliance with the current master plan? In other words, is there anything that could come in that period of sending this back to planning commit, rejecting it, sending it back? Because that's what I want to solve for. That's the only thing, Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick, that's holding me up with your idea.
Same.
Is I want to protect residents, and there's something that is, so what's on the docket. I mean, could there be anything?
Well, remember, this is a master plan, it's a policy document, and we haven't amended the zoning ordinance yet. So if there's pending applications, they would fall under the existing zoning provisions that are in place, because we haven't amended the zoning ordinance yet. So
even if we accept it tonight, they could still put them in under the old zoning?
So, a quick story, in 2011, we had comprehensively updated our master plan, and then we had comprehensively updated our zoning ordinance. And we had one developer who wanted to get his project reviewed under the old Big Beaver zoning provisions. So he got it in just before we amended the zoning ordinance to create the Big Beaver zoning classification. And we had another developer who got it in the day after it was adopted, because he wanted to go under the new provisions. So what can happen for if there was a pending text amendment for the zoning ordinance is you could potentially have a race to get applications in to beat the deadline of the publication of the text amendment.
To follow up, if I may, of these two options that we're wrestling with, what would better protect us? Is it just taking the more time, rejecting it, sending it back? Because you need to do, either way, there's going to be time to update the ordinances. I'm just trying to wonder, you seem to say everything could be a bit faster if we just rejected it, Planning Commission spent more time with it, finalize it, and then you update the ordinances to follow. I mean, in your expert opinion, because I'm not an expert,
I think, although we have, momentum has kind of slowed a little bit, I do want to push this. Part of me wants to push this project to the finish line. Like you said, we're 99% there, and I think there is some time savings, maybe not 63 days, but there's some time savings of sending it back versus adopting it and then initiating an amendment. So in the spirit of expediency, it seems to make more sense to send it back for consideration. Hopefully, it's not a lot of Planning Commission meetings, and we can come back in a timely fashion.
I think the one thing that's clear is that we all want to bring the zoning ordinance changes as quick as possible. So I think if you do reject this and send it back, we will try our very best to get this back in front of you as quick as possible, and we will bring those zoning ordinance amendments changes as quick as possible too. We have a good sense of what needs to be done in terms of zoning. I don't think that's going to be a really heavy lift, and so we can get that back in front of you pretty quickly. But again, we can't do that until the master plan, not something gets adopted.
Councilmember Gunn?
I want to express my appreciation for all the hard work you guys put into this, especially saying, though, let's get it right? You could try and push it and just, we got to start all over or add things. I agree. Let's just get it right and be done.
Councilmember Brooks?
Just quick question. So once the master plan is adopted, what is the time difference between actually changing the zoning ordinance?
So, like I said, we have a good sense. We could even start writing some of the zoning ordinance language now, knowing hopefully what's going to be adopted as part of the
If
master
we
plan.
reject, you could already start writing it.
I have a good sense of where, we have a good,
That'd be fine, that'd be great.
we have a good sense of where this is going. But there's some procedures that have to be followed. So, for example, the planning commission has to have a public hearing on it. So, realistically, the planning commission is going to want to talk about it probably a couple times prior to scheduling a public hearing. So we're looking at probably 2 to 3 months, again, at a minimum, between once the master plan is adopted and once it comes back before you. And that's just because of procedural requirements to adopt new text amendment language. That's regardless if you kick it back tonight, approve part of it tonight. It's once the master plan is adopted, it's probably, again, a 2 to 3 month period between getting the planning commission language and the public hearing before you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yeah, when you talk with planning commission, if we, I came in today, kind of wanting to, like I said, adopt it and move on, but I'm more open to rejecting. I just want planning commission to be clear that we want haste with this. We want this as quickly as possible to get the zoning and ordinance amendments, because the changes in the master plan are all good. They're all pushing us in the right direction. Rereading it many times, comparing it to the old one, there are substantial changes. Like the things that are angering residents the most are no longer permitted, and that's good. I mean, there's still stuff in there that they probably don't want, but I think the big things like those really massive 3-story townhouses and everything, the master plan is like, that is no longer a main use. Like the main use is to serve the neighborhood that's existing. And you can add a little housing if if you already are doing that, but that to me is key. But if we can do the zoning ordinance 2 to 3 months after, if we can get the planning commission get this done in a month and a half, then rejection doesn't sound as bad of an option. I was just worried we keep extending, and especially if you can start zoning ordinance stuff now and just get it rolling, that to me would be great. I know we're 99% of the way there. I want to get this right. And I'm open to that. But I do want to express, like, I'm very hesitant on these going completely to single family zoning on that, because I don't think giant, huge mansions that back up right to the residents is what they want anyway. They would rather have stuff there that would serve them, like commercial properties that are done right, or more creative projects that have like public parks or trails or anything like that. And I think the node, if done right, can do that. However, I'm not opposed to it if it can be justified, but I'm more open to the rejecting tonight and getting the right option than I was coming in.
That would be,
Chanda?
yeah, that would be my question too. I mean, if you're sending it back to the planning, do we have a clear direction among ourselves? I mean, I agree with, Councilmember Hamilton. I mean, we have a lot of good things in this version of the master plan and I think we're 99% there. Yes, that 1%. But do we really know what that 1% is? And unless we have that, I don't see how anybody in the planning commission can, even if they're following our direction, do we have a clear direction? That's my major question. One option is to eliminate the nodes. I don't know if we all agree on that. Other option might be defining what is allowed in that node, like, is it just R1B or is it mixed development? And I feel most of the concerns that residents expressed are currently captured in the document, in the description of the nodes. Like no more than 2-story building, that is there. I mean, 3-story building, that is before this was adopted, so any of the concerns that have been expressed is not going to be solved if we delay it. So now I understand if we adopt it and send it back for another revision, it will take a couple of more months. But that will give planning an opportunity to do a more in-depth study. They will get feedback from everyone. I mean, not just the neighborhood people, but other stakeholders. That will give them a little bit more time. And I believe, I don't think we really know what we are asking them to do. And I'll be brutally honest here.
I want to ask another question procedurally. If we adopted Resolution B, prior to adopting it is the process to seek consensus on what our clear language is. I mean, we were given an opportunity and we're supposed to send written comments of our clear direction of what we were looking for. I know some of us did, and I don't know if everybody did. And we had that opportunity, which was given to us at the meeting at the end of January. So I certainly don't want to try to have a rejection, but then there be an assumption of not a clear direction. To me, there is, while there's not clear direction of do this with parcel 6904, I think that's beyond our scope. I think there's fairly clear, it's pretty obvious to you what the concerns are of our community and probably the majority of us up here, whether Councilmember Hoderick, again, Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick, I'll never get used to this one. I don't know that it's removed, put back to single family. Planning Commission and the experts may say this is why that's not the best thing for our residents and everything. But so it's easy for me to give consensus to that question to put back on them. But do we need to give more specific clarity? I mean, do we really need to say we reject it only if it goes back to single family? I don't think that's the case, right?
No, I don't know this for a fact. I'm just going to guess that the same residents who are coming to planning commissions speaking out against the nodes or making comments are bumping into council members in the grocery store, or they're emailing or calling with concerns. They're coming here and they're commenting. They're similar. It's a similar theme that the Planning Commission has been hearing recently, and you've heard. So, with that being said, I think there's enough direction in the resolution as crafted. The Planning Commission are aware of some of the concerns of the residents, and that they have enough to go on with that direction provided in the resolution and the comments that are provided this evening.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
I guess my question for my colleagues, my inarticulate diatribe that I turned into a question of, is this sufficient? And we got the yes. Is there consensus at the table that what I said is something you agree with asking that subcommittee to re-explore? I respect what you're bringing up, Councilman Chanda, that you're not sure if we are. They're saying yes to the input I just gave. If we have consensus that we would like that to happen, that is the specific direction that they can take, explore with the subcommittee that's very familiar with the discussions we've had with the nodes already. We're not starting from scratch. It's essentially asking them to take another bite at the apple, giving them an opportunity to, which I suspect they might welcome. We might even get something good back.
I agree.
So that's essentially what we're doing. And so and maybe it's your job to ask if we have consensus. I'm sorry if I'm out of process.
I don't know if that's the case. Councilmember Chamberlain Kranga had a
I just wanted to make sure that the consensus is around going back and having Planning Commission explore these things. 'Cause I think I'm with my colleagues. I'm not sure I'm with you on the outcome, but I'm with you on encouraging the exploration. So I can support that. I just want to be clear.
And if you look at the resolution, what it says is it requests the Planning Commission review them to determine whether they should remain in the master plan, be modified in some manner, or eliminated from the master plan. And I think subject to the conversation we've had tonight, which will be somewhat reflected, well, the minutes are the archive of the video, but in your report, I think that, and the planning commissioners watching, wherever you are, some of them do, I'm comfortable knowing that they'll understand where we're coming from. City Attorney Bloom.
Well, I want to make sure it's clear that this resolution is only as to those two nodes. So, and I think that that's where you're going, but again, beforehand, there were some comments that were speaking to, were expanded beyond that. So as to these two nodes, as long as there's consensus on that, I think that it's clear.
Councilor Hamilton?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's reasonable. I think in the end, we want the same end goal here. I think we're pretty aligned on that. I just want to get this done. So, hearing planning staff say, either way, the timeline's kind of the same, that definitely turns me more. This has just taken so long. We've been doing this for so long, and we have a lot of good changes in here. I just want to get them in. So please let Planning Commission know this is priority number one. Like, get this done as fast as you possibly can so we can get this going, get the zoning ordinance put in place. help our neighbors get us where they want us to be.
And to continue the discussion portion, I'm going to move I-5 master plan rejection, resolution B as written in the agenda packet.
Support.
Moved by the chair, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick, that we approve I-5 master plan rejection, resolution B as written in the agenda packet, subject to the consensus we seem to have that we want to have those two nodes looked at more specifically, not necessarily removing them as the only option, but as a potential option, and based on all of our comments thus far, still allowing more discussion right now. Councilmember Brooks?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor.
I'll support. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
You did. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Just keep supporting and supporting.
Support. Thank you, Mayor. I did have a whole bunch of comments kind of made, but it does sound like we're more on the same page, which I'm happy about. Obviously, I was, as Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick said, I was elected in 2019, and that was definitely number one, hands down, top of mind to the residents. We talked with the residents that were in the Alpine McClure area, the Crooks and Waddles area, which, by the way, has been an area of high contention for quite some time. And so I think that it is very, very important that we get it right, as we have stated. I think that I don't like the thought of delaying it more because this is something that we have been wanting to do for a long time. But I think that we have a duty to get it right. This is for our residents, and I think all of us care deeply about the residents and about their concerns, and we're listening, and we want to. The master plan is a visionary document, and it's basically how we want things to look and feel and lay out for the city. And obviously, the zoning ordinance comes in, with that. And so, especially with looking at Crooks and Waddles, there's still areas that are undeveloped. It's a unique intersection, a unique node, and that we really have a chance to really kind of have more input in how we want that area to look and feel. And I think it should be in line with what the residents want that live there, because if we don't do it now, we can't go back and change it. So I think that it's really, really important that we really do take the time now to do it. So that's my thoughts.
Councilmember Chamberlain-Crenco.
Thank you, Mayor. So I came in tonight not wanting the perfect to be the enemy of the good, and really believing that we have done things in this document to protect the residents, to put our residents first. I ran on updating the master plan. That was a passion of mine, very much. But I understand, based on this conversation, of course, we want to get it right, and it's for the residents. The thing I just want to leave on, and this now is going to be back on Planning Commission that's going to look at these two nodes, because I have some different perspectives on them, is sometimes the voices who are loudest are not always all the voices who are represented. And just to be mindful of that, and for example, even the Waddles and Crooks node, I know it's a contentious node. In my mind, if there was money to turn, the city could buy and turn parcels into parks, but we don't have the money for that. But I do know from parents that I go to school with, there are kids literally who, when they get old enough, their pride is getting on their bike and actually going to that corner and using the 7-Eleven. There are kids who actually do use and parents that corner, and that was actually part of a purpose of a node. So again, I want to call on my Planning Commission members to just recognize you may not hear those parents coming out to a Planning Commission meeting and screaming this or that, but there are lots of perspectives. And our goal, and I'm an anthropologist, so my passion is trying to listen for not just the loudest voices, but to listen and look for the voices who are not turning out and who are not speaking, but are impacted and do have a stake. So I ask Planning Commission, keep your mind open and be aware that there's a lot of voices out there, and don't let those go to the wayside.
Councilmember Tondo, did you have something?
Yeah, and thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I wanted to add to what Councilmember Chamberlain-Crenco said. I actually do live in Node F, so it is literally in my backyard. I lived there for 20 years, and I know exactly what you are talking about. My son enjoyed driving his bike to the 7-Eleven. We were scared because traffic is bad, but so there are a lot of people that are happy about this. I also hear my subdivision people not happy about development. So I agree that the Planning Commission needs to take into consideration everything, and that's why I was in favor of approving the plan today and give them some time. We are asking them to do something in 2 months, and this will take time. This is going to take some time to come up with a comprehensive solution. All we are doing is telling them to take a look at the node again, and they have taken a look at this for the last year or so. And to do it right, they need to probably take 6 months. And that's why I was in favor of approving the plan as it is today and then give them more time to do it right. And we don't have to wait for 5 years. We don't need 5 years. We can do it in 5 months, 6 months. But I'm not sure if they can do a real good job in the next 2 months, to be honest. They will try, yes, but what additional information are they going to have beyond they already have to make an additional, what they did not do in December? I mean, that is the question. I'll go with the, the majority and vote for it, but I'm not sure if that was the right approach, so.
Additional discussion? Do you have anything, Ken? James?
Yeah, I'll just add, I'll vote with the majority too. I want to see what I'm open to seeing what they can come up with quickly, to just add to this, and then, we'll take in what they bring. I think there's a good chance we'll move forward on this, and then from there we can kind of decide, where do we go next. I know looking at the previous Planning Commission discussions on this and planning staff discussions, our next 5-year update, they want to do a substantial total revamping of it, is what we're looking at. So that's coming soon too, and that will be interesting, and that'll be the time to really kind of change the whole overall theme. But I want to see what they come back in 2 months, or 1 or 2 months, as quickly as possible, and I think it'll be enough to improve us and get us there, but we may still need to talk more after that too. I mean, again, it's not, we don't have to do every 5 years. It's just, it's one line of text in the state statute that every 5 years you have to look at the plan, but really you can start the amendment process. The Planning Commission has to start the amendment process, but they can do it at any time. And so I'm okay with this, given that it sounds like we can have a kind of streamlined timeline on this, but let's get this done because there's good stuff in here. We need to get it in.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick.
Just, I have faith that the subcommittee that was looking at this will understand where we're coming from, and they've had experience over the past several months, even greater experience for taking a look at it. So I am confident that we can work collaboratively and lock arms and get where we need to be. I'm equally frantic about getting this done. I've been frantic for the past year, very, very concerned about making sure we got this as fast as possible. So I don't disagree with my colleagues about what their concerns are, but I think we can get there faster in this route, and so I'll be supporting the rejection is the term by state law, right? And what we're saying, is, hey, planning, take one more look at this piece of it, this tiny piece of it. And I'm unapologetically doing that because I know that's exactly what residents, not only those that have shown up at Planning Commission meetings and council meetings, but those that came out in droves during elections, those I've heard from when I knock doors, those that I run into at Christmas Eve brunches and in Kroger, and even developers understand what we're talking about that I run into. So this is our job, to abdicate because it's taken time and not take the proper time for us to do our role in the process that we were elected to. I would not sleep well at night. There's a lot of things I'm losing sleep about. I don't want to lose sleep about this too. And I will feel very good about giving our high-quality planning commissioners and our planning department the chance to help us do this. Just dot the i's, cross the t's. It feels like the right thing to do.
Thank you. Do you have anything, Councilmember Gunn? You have something else, Councilmember?
Yeah, just one more quick thing. can you please send a pretty thorough summary of our comments here as part of the agenda item to Planning Commission? And send it by us in case we want to, clarify it, because I think it's really important they get kind of the summary of what we were all saying, what we were deliberating. I know often when we have special meetings, you'll kind of summarize all our comments pretty well, and so I'd kind of like to see that. And oftentimes when we get the packets from them, when we're doing rezoning reviews, we get a summary of their comments. So I think that, because not all commissioners have the time to watch all the meetings and everything and hear every word. I know Ellen is retired, so she spends all her life watching planning commission meetings multiple times while on the beach, but not all planning commission. I want to make sure they get a good summary of what we had, not just the agenda item, because I think there was a lot of nuance to what a lot of us were saying here, and I want to make sure they capture all that. That's
fair. Actually, I would request that they do watch this meeting.
Yes,
Not
that
that
too.
much of an ask.
Sure.
And our meeting from January 29th too. I mean, I don't think that's too much of a heavy lift.
I don't either.
We can air it and have some popcorn. We'll call a special meeting, whatever it takes, but they should watch it, because I think there's also flavor in, as good as our minutes can be or the reports, there's flavor in the way we're presenting and everything. And Councilmember Gunn, you didn't have anything else? Okay, good. I just want to say a couple things. I know we've talked a lot about this, but I do, like everybody here, our planning commission, often their job is harder than ours, because they are the ones that actually, so many of the development projects that are happening in the city don't even come to us. They are there before the planning commission, and they are the ones that are dealing with residents and developers and staff and trying to balance it all out. So my faith in the planning commissioners, each and every one of them, whom I've either appointed or reappointed personally in this role, I know they will do a good job and take what we've said here, what the conversations they've overheard, the input they've had from residents. I mean, what I think gets lost a little bit is, this was started in a sense before COVID, or at the beginning of COVID. That was the idea. COVID changed a lot of things for a lot of different people. This probably would have been done a long time ago had it not been for COVID, and we probably would have had a joint meeting, and we probably would have had the opportunity to sit together and have a lot of these discussions, so there was less issues. But we are here where we are today, and I'm very thankful for the opportunity to get to weigh in at this point, recognizing it's a planning-driven document, but it's our responsibility to make these changes and to approve finally, and the zoning changes as well that will be coming from this. Even if, why it's taken this long to get here is not the point at this point, but if we're here, I'm not going to shortchange my opportunity to weigh in a way that I feel is meaningful for our community, just because I feel a time crunch. For whatever reason, whether that's to try to stop another development or not. I think this is too important. And in 2019, when I was running for mayor and you were running for your first term, there were hundreds and hundreds of residents that we spoke to, not just from people directly impacted by those no's, but from throughout the entire city who were involved in that process. And they were meeting with us as the potential representatives, not with city staff. So city staff was actually immune to a little bit of that, even though you get it in another way. But this is, I still say, I get asked a lot, what's the biggest issue you face in your role as mayor? And from a city business standpoint, it's the development concerns, and they're mostly related to these two nodes at this point. So in my 5th year in this role, if I'm not doing everything I can to try to make sure we're doing, maybe not perfect, I agree, you can't make the perfect the enemy of the good, that's right, but we have to do it right, and the most efficient way, I think, to do that is to reject with our direction to move forward for planning. And I want to add just to what you had said, if there's any question or hesitation with planning commissioners after you present this to them, I'm assuming at the first opportunity you do, please let us know right away. If we need to weigh in further somehow, that would be the appropriate thing to do, because the last thing I want, or any of us want, or the residents want, is to have this come back to us, say, in whatever future meeting, and they'd be like, well, we didn't really know, and they didn't really have the thing, and that would be an inefficiency that I would take responsibility for, so I don't want to do that. Right. So please, I'm looking at you, Brent and Ben, if there is any question, there's got to be a way that would make sense within the rules to have us communicate that. And that said, I guess I will call for the vote for Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember.
This is on proposal B, yeah, resolution B, sorry.
Right. Councilmember Chamberlain Krenga.
Yes.
Councilmember Chanda,
Yes.
Councilmember Gunn,
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick,
Yes.
Mayor Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks.
Yes.
Motion carries. That concludes regular business this evening. I'm going to take a 5-minute recess, and we'll come back with the consent agenda.
afraid of, so, but I think we're good.
Okay, we're back on the record. Next up is the consent agenda. Sorry, I have a mint in my mouth. Does anybody like to pull an item from the consent agenda for further discussion? Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to pull J04B.
Right.
J4B.
Someone like, Councilmember Hamilton.
I'll move all items on the consent agenda as printed in the agenda packet besides J04B.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Hamilton, supported by Councilmember Chanda, that we approve all items on the consent agenda except for J4B, which will be held for further discussion after. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Chanda?
Yes.
Councilmember Gunn?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Craig?
Yes.
Motion carries. If you're here for an item on the consent agenda, other than J4B, all have been approved. Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick, do you want to speak about J4B?
First of all, I'm not taking issue with this item. I'm actually very excited about this item. And sometimes when things are on the consent agenda, they're buried and folks don't even realize we're doing them. The significance of this item for what we're doing in our parks really leaps out at me. And City Manager Miller, I guess what I wanted to do was give an opportunity. I want to ask you the question, if you'd like to take the opportunity to highlight what we're doing here for our parks, which our residents often ask us about.
Public Works staff is prepared to speak about this.
I see Dennis Trantham coming forward.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So before you is a update to two of our parks, Raintree Park and Firefighters Park. This is the third year of the last 3 years we've been doing some park upgrades. If you remember, during COVID, we did JC Park, and it was almost a year to get the play structures in. Last year, we did Beach Road, and we did Flynn Park, and this year is Firefighters and Raintree. One of the cool things about firefighters is we really want the fire theme for this park. We've got the Firefighters Memorial there. We're really concentrating on making this a fire-themed play structure, and this has probably been 2.5 years in the making, working with consultants and trying to figure out like what fit there. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And there is a bid waiver on this too, which is routine and part of our business. Could you take a moment, though,
Correct.
for
Yep.
those that are new to the process?
Yeah, so council, last meeting, maybe 2 meetings ago, council approved an updated bid waiver for purchasing cooperatives. So we're making the purchase off of one of those cooperatives that have already been pre-vetted by, I believe this one was My Deal or U.S. Communities. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilmember Chamberlain Craig.
Thank you, Mayor. And just to remind me, when you make these decisions around what needs to be upgraded, is that part of the 6-year capital improvement plan or a Parks and Recreation plan?
Yes to both. So the Parks Rec Master Plan really spoke to us keeping and maintaining our existing infrastructure. Play structure replacement is part of our 6-year capital plan. We look at what parks are being, I hate to say damaged the most, which ones are falling in the most disrepair. The interesting thing about play structures is they're considered assemblies, and they have to be purchased from the vendor who manufactures when things break. So if a slide flume breaks, it has to be purchased from that manufacturer and approved by the manufacturer. A lot of our play structures have reached the end of their lives, and that's this process of replacing. So just for instance, a section of slide flume can cost anywhere from $5,000 to $8,000 for a section that's, a piece of plastic this long, but it has to be certified by the play manufacturer.
Any other questions? Do you want to move that back in?
Sure.
Or is it, no, it's not moved. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I'll go ahead and move J4B as printed in the agenda packet.
Support. Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick, supported by Councilmember Hamilton, that we approve J4B as printed in the agenda packet. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Gunn?
Yes.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Chamberlain Craig?
Yes.
Councilmember Chanda?
Yes.
Motion carries. That concludes all items on the consent agenda now. Next up, we have public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. Same rules as applied earlier during public comment. As a reminder, you have 3 minutes. When the clock turns yellow, you have 1 minute left. It is not a back and forth discussion. It is an opportunity to address all of us as a body. Our rules prohibit applause, so please keep that in mind, and we will work through this list. There's a good amount of people signed up this evening. So with that said, I will call on the first one, Howard Trito.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. I've been a resident since 1987. I raised a family here, 3 kids. They went to Troy schools. I love Troy, but with respect to the parks and particularly pickleball, which is the fastest growing sport in America, for all ages, we have done nothing to try and enhance the sport here in this city. It's not the city of today, tomorrow in respect to that. It's got 4 dedicated courts at Redwood. That's it. And the fences are falling down there. I called last year and had them at least try and cut the vines that were pulling them down, and they missed a couple, and it's still falling down. You put a Band-Aid on it by putting 4 courts in or marking them at Bowling Park, and you still have to use tennis nets. You did it at I think it's Brimstone Park. Same thing. You got to use a tennis net for a pickleball court. I'm not sure how much work went into analyzing what could be done to accommodate both sets, so it's multi-use. I've seen it. You put the taunts in the posts. You can raise and lower them for each sport. Pretty simple. But the other thing is that it really bugs me is since 2018, pickleball has had a budget for, I think it's 6 or 8 courts at Bowling. And every year it's been cut. And this is just for design and development, giving you the costs of what it might be. And, you know, we're behind the times. All these other communities around us are way ahead. And now private enterprises are jumping in and taking residents' money so we can play pickleball. If you've been at the rec center, there's 4 and 8 courts. There's usually 60 people trying to play on 4 courts and maybe 8. It's ridiculous, and that's, you know, you got to do something, and I find it absurd that there is no budget for recreation in this. It comes out of the capital fund. Something should be done, whether it's a millage like the library. I think we're one of the lowest tax cities in the county, and I think people support our Parks and Rec, and we couldn't come begging, like, you know, for the play structure, for I forget the name of the sport that's going in at firefighters, but they got a lot of money, and you got to come out of the capital fund. It should be a recreation budget. So I need you guys to step up and start looking into that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trito. Next up is Saba Maroof.
Hello, good evening. Dear council members, I would like to take a minute to read out a proclamation passed by Troy City Council almost exactly 2 years ago on February 28th, 2022, which was standing in solidarity with the Ukrainian American community in Troy during the conflict in Ukraine. I'll kind of summarize it, but whereas the city of Troy is home to many proud Ukrainian Americans who bring their beautiful culture and strength to our community, alongside more than 39,000 Ukrainian Americans in the state of Michigan, according to 2019 census data. And whereas the Ukrainian diaspora community in Troy and the surrounding region make up one of the largest and most active Ukrainian American communities in the United States, and the community is understandably shocked and deeply pained by the recent invasion and unprovoked attack on the sovereign country of Ukraine, with many having relatives and loved ones in the country. And whereas the city of Troy is also home to many East European and Slavic communities with roots and family members in countries surrounding Ukraine, and have bravely and compassionately stepped up to denounce unjustified aggression and to provide humanitarian support to the hundreds of thousands of women and children fleeing conflict. in Ukraine. And whereas the City Council believes in the value of freedom and democracy and the essential role that local government plays in building a democratic society, and so speaking out on these values is important when they are threatened in the world. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Troy City Council reaffirms the values of freedom and democracy in the face of an attack on them, recognizing that freedom has never come easily, as stated in Troy City Council's proclamation dated June 1st, 2020. Be it further resolved that we invite Troy residents to stand in solidarity and unity with the Ukrainian community in Troy and around the world, and all those standing up alongside them for freedom and democracy in the world. I don't want to run out of time. So here are some facts surrounding this important proclamation, just for the community's education as well. Russia's initial invasion to Ukraine was on February 24th, 2022, and our Troy City Council passed this proclamation resolution 4 days later on February 28th. During that council meeting, 4.5 minutes is all it took to waive 2 rules and pass this resolution. By February 28th, 102 civilians were killed and 304 were injured, which is less than 0.5% of the number killed and injured in Gaza now. There was no mass starvation, lack of food, fuel, shelter, or health care, basic medicines, anesthetics. I could go on and on. My point is not to compare atrocities. All life is sacred. My point is to compare our city's response. 2 rules were waived to pass this proclamation. The City Council meeting was started with a prayer for Ukraine. Most city members dressed in blue and yellow. The Ukraine flag colors lit the City Council building. There was no public comment or discussion regarding this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Ifat Shaheen.
Dear Council Member, I'm a resident of City of Troy for the past 14 years. In listening to the last speech, one can wonder, is the war in Ukraine a part of Troy City business? Was the Ukraine proclamation going to end the war in Ukraine? Why is there a double standard? We recognize that at the time of passing of this proclamation, there was no rule regarding proclamations that comment on matters outside of Troy. However, we also recognize that this rule was made by the same City Council, which stood for those values outlined in that proclamation. We also recognize that 2 other rules were waived to pass the Ukraine resolution. We have shown you how this issue affects Troy citizens directly and the importance of this for our city. We cannot help but ask ourselves, how much is the worth of Palestinian children's blood? Is it less valuable than that of other children? Does the double standard exist because Ukraine is a European, white, or mostly Christian country? Do we think it is okay to kill and ethnically cleanse native populations of a land like we did to the native populations in America? Perhaps our media is so biased and the council members are not informed, but we have provided facts, resources, information, both publicly and privately. You have to be living under a rock to not see the horrific images of genocide coming out of Gaza. You take issues and claim divisiveness regarding passing a proclamation to end the killing and suffering. I need to outline where things are different regarding our ask. Compared to the proclamation you previously passed for Ukraine, which was very unilateral. Unlike the Ukraine proclamation, we are not asking you for a one-sided statement, standing with one people. We're not asking you to put the blame on one side or to denounce the aggression from one side. This is not a political ask, but a humanitarian one. You stated in the Ukraine proclamation, and I quote, "The City Council believes in the values of freedom and democracy and the essential role that local government plays in building a democratic society. And so speaking out on these values is important when they are threatened in the world and recognizing that freedom has never come easily. If these values no longer matter to you, now would be the time to say we made a mistake with the Ukraine statement and to publicly reverse that proclamation. One cannot deny there is a level of hypocrisy and double standard here that is so astounding, it screams so loud in our faces." Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next up is Talia Azarudin.
Good evening, dear Mayor and Council members. I'm Talia Surdeen, a human resources professional, a Troy resident for a majority of my life, and a graduate of Troy High School. I would like to begin by reading to you the statement that we have put forth for your review, and this is what we believe the City of Troy stands for. Whereas, Troy is committed to the well-being of its residents, maintaining a vibrant, safe, and diverse community, and firmly condemns violence against civilians of any background, faith, or ethnicity. Whereas, many Troy residents have been severely impacted due to the loss of civilian life, especially children, as well as displacement, lack of food, shelter, and other basic human necessities. Whereas, many Troy residents have been affected by the escalation of hate speech, including Islamophobia, anti-Palestinian rhetoric, and anti-Semitism recently in relation to this conflict, which contradicts the core values of the Troy community. Therefore, be it resolved, the Troy City Council unequivocally supports all Arab, Israeli, Palestinian, Jewish, Muslim, and other affected community members. We believe in their right to live, work, worship, gather, advocate, mourn, and celebrate without fear of intimidation, harassment, doxing, or violence. Further resolved, the Troy City Council advocates for our residents' well-being by calling for an immediate and permanent bilateral ceasefire, the release of all hostages and prisoners, and calls for unhindered humanitarian aid at levels recommended by the United Nations for the Palestinian people. This marks the end of the statement proposed. I'd like to use my remaining time to share some additional comments I had. We have gathered here in front of you today and for the past few weeks to voice our concerns, not only about what is happening across the world, but how this affects us all here in our city, our home, our Troy. Working in human resources while employed by an organization, we work and advocate for the employees, for the people. While we too have policies and procedures that we have to abide by, we also hold the grave responsibility of recognizing when there is a need for change. Similarly, as a community of constituents, our hope is that the City Council we've elected hears us, but that's not all. Understands us, supports us, stands by us, and uses their voice, power, and responsibility to serve as a catalyst for change we can't make on our own. As the city of tomorrow today, we are typically the ones leading by example. Why shy away from it now? Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Next up is Sikandar Khatri.
Good evening, Ethan. Good evening, Council. I've been living in this city for 35 years, and I'm very proud of this city. I'm glad to see you today, President Day. You guys are all working. Okay, only thing I want to share, well, other people already done that, almost 30,000 people gone, and most of them are women and children, totally helpless. We need to pass the resolution. Okay, everyone else has done that. I don't want to be behind. I'm proud of my city. Okay, and I urge you guys to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Iba Najam.
Hello and Assalamu alaikum. My name is Iba Najam and I'm 10 years old. Thank you for the opportunity for me to speak. I have seen photos and videos of the children in Gaza and they make me feel so uncomfortable. I have seen kids being separated from their parents, schools getting bombed, and crowded hospitals. I could never imagine always being scared that my house is going to be bombed. In Gaza, there is no places that are safe, nor places that you can feel safe. There are children my age who don't have parents and have to survive all on their own. The kids who survived this genocide will take more than a lifetime to recover what they've been through. In my school, we have sent letters to our military and veterans thanking them for what they have done and trying to cheer them up. We have learned to always help people in need and show kindness. But then why isn't anyone talking about what's happening in Gaza and trying to show support? We have learned in school how to take care of ourselves and about our physical and mental health. Hearing about what's happening affects my mental health. I can't imagine the mental health of kids just like me in Gaza. In Leonard Elementary, I have been taught the 5 values of kindness, responsibility, integrity, respect, and perseverance. In the city of Troy, these are the values we are learning in our schools, so I'm wondering why we aren't implementing these to the situation in Gaza. Why aren't we showing kindness to Gazan children by supporting them in these hard times? Why aren't we showing respect by thinking about how we would feel if we were in this situation? Shouldn't we be showing integrity by raising our voice for ceasefire? Why aren't we showing responsibility by doing our part when we have the ability to? We can make a difference if the adults in power call for ceasefire and persevere no matter how many tries it takes. City of Troy, don't be a part of the reason me and other kids will have to read about the tragedy of Palestine in our textbooks. Please be the capable and responsible adults you are and introduce a ceasefire resolution for the crisis in Gaza. Thank you and free Palestine.
Thank you. Please don't applaud. Thank you. Listen, the rules are the rules. I appreciate it. Don't break our rules. Next up, Sana Shaker.
Good evening, City Council and Mayor. My name is Sana Shaker. I'm a Troy resident, a mom, a wife, and a physician. I spoke at one of the City Council meetings back in January regarding this issue, and I've had the chance to meet some of you since that time. Back in January, we approached you on a crucial and time-sensitive matter that affected many of your constituents. You claimed foreign policy issue, not your lane. We showed you the relevance to our community, the wholesomeness of our message. We offered collaborative efforts from diverse voices. We met with you publicly and privately. You asked us to go to speak to federal and state officials. We showed you our state and national efforts, the sealed shut doors that we've met in return. Since December, over 20,000 calls logged in our Michigan phone bank to our Michigan reps and senators. We have exhausted emails, letters, protests, events, and speeches, all falling to deaf ears. You provided sympathies and said there is nothing you can do. We asked you to represent us before these state and national officials who are outright ignoring us. A letter, a meeting perhaps, or at the very least help us find a way through because you represent us. More dodged questions, and you told us to go to focus on interfaith events. We made you aware of our community's years of sincere interfaith efforts, which have led to more closed doors and pin drop silence. And besides, what political influence does interfaith have? Nothing. Nothing, nothing. We have come up with nothing. Do you see why we call a double standard? Sympathy is not enough. The killing of 13,000 children is not justified. The killing of 30,000 civilians is not justified. 1.9 million displaced is not justified. Ethnic cleansing is never justified. Genocide is never justified. We need to do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Hajra Ahmad.
Dear Council members, on the night of February 11th, 2024, while we were safe in our homes watching the Chiefs take victory at the Super Bowl, another attack was unleashed upon the citizens of Palestine. Rafah, home to over 1.4 million civilians taking refuge against the strikes Israel continues to send upon them, was a perceived safe zone for the people of Palestine. On the morning of February 12th, 2024, dozens of civilians, many of whom were women and children, were martyred. And there are no hospitals left intact for the wounded. This isn't a hunt for Hamas. The average age of death, according to Al Jazeera in November 2023, was 5 years old. This is not a hunt for Hamas. This is an Israeli end to terrorism. This is not an Israeli end to terrorism. This is an erasure of the Palestinian people. Thankfully, the United States has proposed a United Nations resolution for a temporary ceasefire in response to these attacks. Keyword temporary. A temporary halt on a genocide is not enough to save the atrocities that have been committed to the Palestinian soil. We need a permanent end to this genocide. And I know change can happen. Local or not, any form of elected officials have the chance to speak on behalf of its citizens to do what's right. Our federal and state governments are part of the same force. After all, just 2 weeks ago, I saw you, Mayor Ethan Baker, and House Representative Haley Stevens side by side, enjoying the music I was playing for the Troy Country Fiddlers. As our representatives, I urge you to not only show extended support for this temporary ceasefire, so people know that we are in support of this, but to call for a permanent one, and to join many others such as Detroit, Dearborn, and Flint in our humanitarian cause. My name is Hadra Ahmad. I'm going to be a graduate of Troy High School, and from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
Next up is Ishal Qureshi.
Hello, City Council members. My name is Ishal Qureshi, and I'm 9 years old. I was born and raised in the great city of Troy. I have a question for you. When you eat, drink, and comfort yourselves in a cozy house, have you ever thought about those people that don't have any of those things? Well, guess what? The people in Palestine don't have anything even close to these necessary things. Many kids, just like me, have no food or water and are doing anything as possible to survive. Therefore, I would like to ask the City Council to approve the ceasefire resolution. The reason I ask this is because every day we live in the safe city of Troy. People in Gaza are getting bombed and innocent lives are lost, even though they are far away. And we need to do everything that we can to support the people that are being oppressed. Thank you for listening to my opinion.
Thank you. Next up is Sahana Ahmed.
Good evening, council members. My name is Sahana Ahmed. I have been a Troy resident for 13 years. Troy is an ideal city where I feel belong and feel safe. I would like to address the genocide that is occurring in Gaza, Palestine, that has escalated immensely since October 7th and the prior decades. Thousands of innocent lives have been lost. Majority of them being children. I believe our city has enough intellect to determine between good and bad. I believe promoting and approving a ceasefire will put us in the right side of history and perhaps bring us growth within the community and country. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Fasahad Hamzavi.
Good evening, council members, mayor. I remember distinctly meeting you at the porch of our house when you were running with your family. It was very heartwarming to see that. Hard to follow, like the children here, when they are speaking from the heart. And Ishal, the little girl who just spoke, plays on the Troy soccer team with my daughter. This issue is not something that, my wife has been kind of spearheading a lot of this, and I didn't see kind of the relevance of city in that. But when I found out about the Ukraine proclamation, and then finding out that a couple rules were passed, and I've been watching it online from home while I was taking care of the 4 kids, I was a little bit disappointed to hear that. It's no disrespect to any of you. We appreciate all the time that you put into doing this often thankless job. I understand that you're a fan of President Ronald Reagan. When I moved to the United States, I became a big fan of John Kennedy. My father was thinking about living in Texas versus Michigan, and so I just had a liking for him. It wasn't until much later that I read this book, and I'm sure that many of you have probably read Profiles in Courage. Allow me just to read an excerpt from just the opening chapter. This chapter is titled Courage and Politics. This is a book about the most admirable of human virtues, courage. Grace under pressure, Ernest Hemingway defined it. And these are the stories of the pressures experienced by 8 United States senators and the grace with which they endured them, the risk to their careers, the unpopularity of their courses, the defamation of their characters, and sometimes, but sadly only sometimes, the vindication of their reputations and their principles. A nation which has forgotten the quality of courage which in the past has been brought to public life is not as likely to insist upon or reward the quality in its chosen leaders today. And in fact, we have forgotten. In the foreword that was written by his brother less than 1 month after his assassination on December 18th, 1963, he concludes, Robert Kennedy concludes this by saying, "This book is not just the stories of the past, but a book of hope and confidence for the future. What happens to the country, to the world, depends on what we do with what others have left us." I would encourage you and respectfully ask you to consider and seriously pass this, even if it is not all of you, if it is just one of you that will change the course and maybe be listed, maybe not in this book, but in the book of our hearts. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Soraya Esek-Farachia.
Good evening, council members. My name is Soraya Esek-Farachia. I am a resident of Troy. I'm here today again with a very heavy heart. Every day we hear about hundreds of people, including children and women, that are massacred daily in Gaza. We don't relate to them because we don't know them. But we have a resident of Troy here this evening who has already lost more than 60 people in his family in Gaza. Yesterday he got a call with 30 more people in his family were massacred right here. And hopefully he will speak after me. How do you deal with that? I don't know. One person dies, you feel bad. 30 people, 90 people in your family, I honestly don't know. This is not a foreign policy anymore. It is something that a local resident is dealing with right now. I am not asking you to put to call for a ceasefire resolution on the agenda. How can I, when I feel like I'm talking to a wall? But I have hope that somewhere in that wall are people with a heart, someone who has the moral courage and the moral voice to stand up against the directions given maybe in your executive sessions. Netanyahu and the Zionist Israeli government are committing a genocide. They are guilty of war crimes. Withholding food and water from children is a war crime. Joe Biden, unfortunately, is also known as Genocide Joe or Biden the Butcher, is our commander-in-chief of the USA, and the US government has been supporting this genocide unconditionally. Silence also means complicit. This City of Troy Council, just by being silent, is also complicit in this genocide. Joe Biden has blood on his hands, and I'm so sorry to say that by your silence, you have blood on your hands. Some of you have young children, some adults, some have grandchildren. How do you feel when they ask you in a few years from now, where did you stand on this genocide ruling? What are you going to leave behind as your legacy? Is it just going to be blood on your hands? I pray that someone somewhere here has the moral courage and the moral voice to stand up and say, one person can make a difference. We talk about everything being local. Well, I have some statistics here, and I hope I have time to read it. Right now, Troy, Michigan sends $1.2 million to weaponize Israeli funds. With that money, if we used it here, 142 households with public housing for a year, 416 children receiving fro or low-cost health care, 13 elementary school teachers could be hired, 3,411 households with solar electricity could be produced for a year, 31 students could have their loan debt canceled, 1,041,883 N95 respirator masks could be bought with the money right here in Troy. Thank you.
Next up is Momina Rathur.
Good evening, council members, community members, mayor. Thank you for your service to our city. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to speak about something very important to me. It has been weighing heavy on my heart. I was born and raised here in this city. I went to the Troy schools and enjoyed a privileged upbringing. Today, I'm a special education teacher and raise my 4 children here in the city of Troy. The Palestinian issue is indeed a Troy issue. We are here to say that we are deeply affected by it and refuse to move on until you show support. Everything I learned in Troy schools point to demanding peace. Embedded in our culture is the civil rights movement and peaceful protesting. However, we see people being arrested for demanding peace, worse yet, being labeled as terrorist sympathizers and anti-Semites. We were given the Diary of Anne Frank in school and visited the Holocaust Memorial Center. What was the takeaway meant to be? The lesson from that, of course, was never again. But here we are. As a special education teacher, I'm trained to work towards developmental and educational goals of children who have special needs. In young children, we develop both their gross and fine motor skills. In our schools, we let our young ones out to play twice a day, often in very low temperatures and snow. They lug their snow pants and boots to school to make this happen. Imagine my horror when I read that 1,000 children have lost their limbs. My country and Israel are to blame. I can't help but feel broken myself. My son attends Troy Union Elementary. He's a child who receives special education. He received early intervention and physical therapy from 6 months on through when he was in kindergarten. I remember the difficulty with which we got him to learn how to walk. It was hard, he hated it. He used to cry whenever he saw Sue, his therapist, and Sue would hold his ankles straight as he wobbled and screamed with tears. Oftentimes I would have to walk away because I couldn't take the crying. But Sue kept at it. She got him walking at 1.5 years, and the day he took his first steps, we all shed tears of gratitude. My husband and I bought her a watch to say thank you. But as I watch him riding his bike and playing soccer around the neighborhood, I can never really repay her. And I am appalled by the words and actions of our leaders. How can we idly stand by and watch the likes of Haley Stevens, who signed off on billions more to destroy the lives of more children? UNICEF reported that every day 10 children lose one or both limbs. One 12-year-old boy has said in Gaza that he has lost his legs, but also his friends, and become an outcast. This shatters my heart, and it cannot be fixed, just like the lost limbs and lost family members can never be replaced. As a teacher and a mother, I cannot and will not move on from this issue until you support me in it. I expect you to support me, and I call for a ceasefire.
Thank you. Next up is Mustafa Rashid.
Good evening, council members. The last time I was here was 8 years ago, and I and some of my classmates received a city proclamation about a documentary we made on the Flint water crisis. And while I'm grateful for the recognition, I can't help but shake off the idea that I can't remember a time growing up when our city took action on a matter of national importance or international importance when it wasn't already widely accepted to do so, or it was way after the events that happened. When I grew up through the city of Troy, through the Troy School District, I know our city has a culture of celebrating MLK Day. We eventually recognized what was going on with Flint. We even more recently recognized the Armenian genocide. It's an important thing to do, and we should keep on doing it. But alongside reading about history, we were taught to be on the right side of history when we witnessed it. We have an opportunity to do that today, be a part of living history, by saying as a city what is happening to the people of Gaza is wrong. I came anxious to ask for a ceasefire statement because, while I know there are geopolitical efforts going on, we're at the end of the rope here. The population of Gaza has moved as south as they can of the Strip. There is nowhere to go anymore, and innocent people are being bombed. Every hour, every day, every week, we're probably not going to make it to the end of the month to even call for a ceasefire anymore. But it's not too late, council members. It's not too late to be a part of living history and speak as a city now. We can show the world that suburban cities don't need to wait till after the bad things have happened to say something. If you can fathom it, things can actually get worse from here. More innocents will be killed, and the least we can do as a city is call for it to be stopped. I go to law school at the University of Michigan, and I felt compelled to make the drive here because I recently attended the wake of a close friend's relative who died in Gaza. That relative was my close friend's grandmother. Let's do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Kutsi Alon.
Salam, shalom, peace. I'm Kutsi Alon, a mother of two and a business analyst by profession. I'm a member of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community and Troy resident since 2010. This is my third visit here, seeking the Council to introduce and pass a ceasefire resolution to stop the genocide in Gaza funded by our taxpayer dollars. This genocide has become a litmus test for humanity in our time, whether on international, national, or local level. What we, the residents of Troy, and our children are learning is that the human rights values espoused by our nation are wholly dependent on race, religion, and other political interests. We are witnessing that human rights violations are only cited as atrocities when our country wants to bomb a Muslim or non-white country or use it for other political gain. Internationally recognized ultimate inhumanities like ethnic cleansing and genocide mean absolutely nothing if the victims are of a certain race or religion. Western media deliberately reinforces the misconception that the Israel-Palestine issue is all about Israel versus Arab Muslims, when Arab Christians are also persecuted and killed, and non-Zionist Jews are publicly beaten up and jailed in Israel. These stories are not publicized here because to our public institutions, Muslim life is expendable and without consequence. I'm hoping and praying our local government will be an exception to this disturbing pattern. I'm beginning to lose hope with this process for the following reasons. Troy City Council passed a resolution declaring solidarity with Ukraine just 4 days into the war, without civilian massacre, without any Troy residents demanding it, and without any public discussion on it. But the same council is adamantly against a resolution asking to support a ceasefire to stop the children of Gaza being bombed, maimed, and starved to death, funded with our tax money. This herring atrocity has gone on for 4 months, well over 4 months, and near 30,000 civilians have been killed, half of whom were children. Farmington Hills City Council passed a resolution declaring solidarity with Ukraine despite a clause in their rules to not comment on foreign affairs, clearly indicating that these are non-binding rules that can be circumvented if a city council deems the message important. If the U.S. city councils are again asked to collaborate to pass a resolution supporting some favored foreign nation, my guess is that the city council will make an exception for that. Troy City Council can still keep the scope of resolutions and proclamations narrow by limiting it to foreign nations where our tax dollars are being used and where residents of Troy are being affected. Our congressional and Senate representatives are not listening to us. I, along with many others, are voting uncommitted in the Democratic primaries, and I would invite everyone to do so because that has the potential of affecting some change in the Democratic Party to change their position on the ceasefire. And I would request City Council to add this item in your agenda for discussion, please. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up is Zarif Ghazi.
Good evening, Troy City Council. My name is Zarif Ghazi, and I have been a lifelong resident of the city of Tomorrow for 27 years now. So when it comes to the diversity of this city, believe me, I grew up amongst it and have crafted part of my worldview based on what I have learned from the variety of cultures I have interacted with over the years living in the city. Both you, the City Council, and I know that within this diversity is the Palestinian people who have been undergoing a genocide and apartheid for decades now. This recent siege in Gaza and the West Bank has killed 30,000 plus people, and that was only on Saturday, so the numbers are definitely higher now, with 12,000 of those being children. That's the equivalent of 7.5 Athens high school auditoriums where I had gone to high school. That's 7.5 auditoriums of lost dreams, lost hopes, and lost aspirations. Now, I know that in the past, the City Council, you said that you guys can't involve yourself in foreign affairs. And I would argue that that this is actually a local issue, one that affects the daily livelihoods of your constituency who live in constant fear and trauma about what's happening to their family and friends back home in Palestine. These are Troy residents among us whom I believe that you, as City Council, have a duty to represent them and their calls for a ceasefire in a 75-year-long brutal apartheid and occupation. I, and along with many other Michiganders, are absolutely appalled and distraught by the violence which we have seen come out of Gaza and the West Bank, which would not be possible without the cooperation of the American taxpayer. As a taxpayer and a Troy resident, I believe it is within my right to call for a ceasefire and demand for the humanity of my Palestinian brothers and sisters. Thank you for your time. Ceasefire now. Let's help stop the genocide now. And I will be voting uncommitted on the Democratic primary on February 27th, and I invite all of you to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Kira Taylor-Romes.
Hi, I live on 17 Mile in DeQuinder. I've been in Troy since I was 8. I'm just one of many voices asking for a ceasefire as well. Thank you for listening and thank you for your time. We appreciate it. 61% of voting Americans want a permanent ceasefire and de-escalation of violence. The majority of us in this room are here for just that reason. We feel that this majority support and really high effort on our parts are not being met by you guys. We are calling for a ceasefire and justice and peace, and we feel that that is just not being represented in this council, unfortunately, as well as by Michigan and federal governments as well. On the other hand, there are 14 neighboring Michigan cities that have passed a ceasefire resolution recently, and we thank them tremendously for that. I would also like to talk about how this can't only be described as a foreign matter. Many of us here have family or friends who are suffering in Gaza, and all of us in this room feel the pain of the inaction of our government on the federal and Michigan and city levels. Many of us have never been this involved politically. This has changed me personally. I will be probably quite political for the rest of my life because of this, and I view this city through that lens now, as well as many other people I've met and discussed with. We're gathered here today, which I think really shows that this is local, you know. Most of this room is people united for this one cause, and I think that really shows its importance to all of us here. I think a lot of us in this room would also be glad to work with you to pass this resolution and discuss your thoughts on it as well. I think we really would be glad to work together, quite a few of us. So overall, please accurately represent us here in Troy and help slow the death toll that has already reached 30,000 in Palestine by passing a permanent ceasefire. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Yasir Mohammed. All right. Next up is Abdul Rahman Hamad.
Thank you, Mayor. It's good to see all of you again. So I think I told you about my aunt who was hosting about 70 extended family members. A house just like hers that was packed with relatives of mine was bombed yesterday morning, and 30 of my extended family members were killed. I don't know what to say much beyond that, but this is a daily occurrence funded by my tax dollars and your tax dollars. I'm not going to talk too much about my family again because this is not about me. I want to speak to the story of Hind. Have any of you heard the story of Hind, the 6-year-old? She was in a car with 6 other family members driving in Gaza. A sniper started shooting at them. Shot 1, then 2, and 3, and 4, and 5, 6, and she was the only one alive. She found a phone, called her mother, and you can imagine she was mortified, terrified. I don't know who was more terrified or mortified, Mom or Hind. And while Mom was talking to Hind, she heard the sniper shots being shot towards Hind. An ambulance was sent to her with 2 ambulance crew members. It was 12 days before anyone heard from either Hind or the ambulance members. They did find them. Hind was shot and killed. So were the 2 ambulance members. I say this story because this story haunts me. Haunts me. I think about my 5-year-old daughter. I pray to God no one ever has to experience this. None of us here, no Muslim, Christian, Jew, Israeli, Palestinian, you name it. That is what we are asking you to recognize as our pain. Is our pain. We're not asking you to make a foreign policy decision, a stance. We're not asking you to stand with one people, with one nation. We're not asking you to condemn anyone, to put the blame on anyone. We are simply asking you to recognize our pain, our sadness, our natural human desire for the killing of the children to stop, for the hunger to stop, and for people to have anesthetics when they need an amputation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Amina Ahmad.
Good evening, City Council members. My name is Amina Ahmed, and I am a 6th grader in the Troy Schools District. I am very proud to be in one of the best school districts in the United States of America. I was born in Troy and have lived in Troy my whole entire life. It may seem to you that we don't know what is going on in our world, but we all know. We all know what is happening, and we know what we as a country are doing to support it. We know that it is wrong and it is unjust, but we are confused as to why you aren't doing anything. I'd like to acknowledge the fact that when the Ukrainian crisis occurred, our schools taught us to stand up for what's right. But when it came to Palestine, everyone was quiet. A child my age living in Gaza doesn't even have the same humanitarian rights as me. We need to stop the killing. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you. Next up is Bilal Ahmed.
Good evening, council members. My name is Bilal Ahmed, and I am 13 years old. I'm here today to talk about the things that are happening in the world right now. I grew up in Troy, and I have lived in Troy my entire life. I go to one of the best schools in Michigan, which is Bolin Park Middle School in Troy. I think that Troy is a very safe place for someone to live in, and that the community is very loyal and kind to one another. I am asking the City Council to send a message to the White House asking for a ceasefire on Gaza. I think that every country in the world should live in peace. There are innocent lives at stake across the world everywhere, but I don't think they have to be in danger from war. Shouldn't we all think about the dead, cold bodies in Gaza that everyone there has to see every single day since this war began? I plead to send a message to the White House to ask for a ceasefire so every country in the world can live in peace. God bless humanity. Thank you and have a good night.
That concludes those that have signed up for public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. Now is an opportunity for City Council or City Administration to respond and reply. If we are planning to talk about the majority of public comment, I don't think Mr. Trito is still here. Pickleball has been on our mind for as long as I've been on council, and none of us up here have ever cut any pickleball projects from a budget. Maybe they've been cut before they've made it to us, but none of us have ever cut a pickleball project and wouldn't if it came to us in a budget. That said, I hope you continue to reach out and we can work with the appropriate people to address that issue. That said, anyone have any comments relating to public comment? No? Well, I do, because I'm sorry. I will continue to speak out on behalf of in my role as the mayor. Just a couple important things. I want to make it so clear that our proclamation process is not to acknowledge our residents' pain. And if it was for that purpose, that would be a very different situation. And I think individually I can speak, and I can't speak for all of us, but we hear your pain, we understand your pain, we aren't in your shoes, and so it makes it difficult for that. But there's never there's never a time up here when your personal stories and the news we see coming from throughout this world is not affecting us and how it relates to our residents and the pain they are feeling. But our proclamation process is not to acknowledge pain, whether that's pain related to what's happening in Gaza, what's happening in Armenia, what's happened in Israel, what's happened in any place throughout the world. I can tell you my personal care for your pain, and I will continue to do so. I don't think any of you here in this room today are not hurting. You wouldn't be here if you weren't. And it breaks my heart to think that any of you feel that way, or you're running into a brick wall. I understand where you're coming from when you say that, but it's not because we don't feel where you're coming from and understand why you're here. I do want to speak about Ukraine, the proclamation, for a second, and I'm hesitant to do so, but in hindsight, I do think it was a mistake. It was well meant and well intended at the time, but hearing some of that language back to me now, 2 years later, I think it probably went too far in our role, and that was before we changed our rules that said we aren't going to do those kind of things. So I have no problem saying that. I'm not going to retract, we don't do that. We don't retract proclamations. But as someone who asked for someone to say it was a mistake, I think it was a mistake to do that 2 years ago. And that's one of the reasons our rule change was made, so that we didn't delve into those types of situations. So we learned from our mistakes in that respect. I apologize for banging the gavel so hard after the applause. Sometimes it lands a little quicker than you thought, but I don't want what happens in this council chamber to be used in other parts of this state as an example of how these things should be going on. And I see things, I know, for example, Ferndale passed a resolution that actually didn't call for a ceasefire, but it's being marketed as Ferndale passed a ceasefire resolution. And I don't think that's right. And I'd be very, very concerned if a similar thing happened in Troy with any of our resolutions, to have them misused like that. And so I am sensitive to all of the moving parts in that, and I don't want to see us go down a path that creates more difficulties for the very important people in our community who are hurting. And that is the sincere fear I have for everyone here tonight. Hate has no place in the city of Troy. A proclamation asking for a ceasefire, I fear, is more likely to cause more hate here in the city of Troy than it's going to do to stop anything happening overseas. And I know many of you don't disagree with that, but there's not the 40, 50, 60, 70 people coming here with a different view on this topic. And the minute that starts happening, I fear for our city in a number of ways. I don't believe any of our inaction toward the proclamation makes any of us complicit in genocide. I feel very strongly that I can't believe I have to say that as the mayor of Troy, that I have to say I'm not complicit in any genocide because I'm not passing a resolution. That's not our role here, but that is where we're at today, and I understand it. It's a federal issue that is not being properly addressed. I also do want to say, someone had said, a couple people had mentioned that it seems like we're saying this is just a foreign policy issue or just a foreign issue. The pain in our community is not a foreign issue. I understand that wholeheartedly. The people who are here tonight, we're not saying we're not doing a resolution because this is just something overseas. We understand that it affects all of us in this room. And the more you're here, the more it's affecting our entire city. So it does affect all of us. I don't think that it was made clear that when those early comments about foreign policy, those are specific to proclamations, not to what's happening and how it affects our residents here. I appreciate, again, the passion and the sincerity in each and every one of you who came forward to speak. You are exercising your right based on the rules provided to you in our city hall and through our meetings to do what you feel is your best course of action, and I respect that. And from an activist standpoint, aside from my role up here, I fully support your efforts to do whatever you think is best to advocate for what you believe is right. That's what makes this country so great, and that's what makes our city the place it is. I'm sure I'll see some of you again in an upcoming meeting. I understand that as well. I feel for each and every one of you who feel that you need to come here and tell us everything that you're feeling. It means there's a lot of pain in our city that's very difficult to deal with. Next up are council referrals. We do have a council referral this evening. N1 is a council referral from Councilmember Chanda. I'll turn it over to Councilmember Chanda.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I wasn't sure if it goes here or the council comment, but as it's written there, I have received a lot of input from Troy seniors, and I'm sure all our council colleagues have received similar inputs. What I was proposing that we basically come to a consensus that we kind of look at what type of senior programs we have here in Troy and compare them to the neighboring cities or comparable cities and see where we are lacking, where we are doing better. It's an informal study, I would say. I know there are a lot of things going on with the city administration, so I don't want to make it something very burdensome, but I think it's probably may not take very long to look at things like we don't have a senior center, some of the other cities have. That doesn't mean we're not doing anything. Our community center is very nice. So that's kind of what I want to bring it up to the rest of the council to see if we can get a consensus on starting a study which can look at the gaps that we have and what we can do better. So.
Can I ask city administration up front, based on what was submitted as N1, does that give you, if we were to consent on that, does that give you clear direction or clear enough direction on what to get a ball rolling, or do you need something more from us?
Well, from my standpoint, I think we have enough, but I'm going to turn to Bob. Do you think you need any more input?
No, I think this is enough to get started.
Okay. I'm sure there's consensus for that, to have some, I'm guessing there's an issue that's top of mind for a lot of people. I did convene an informal senior advisory group and had our first meeting a week or two ago, and one of the people on the board is Bill Rhodes, who's the chair of the Friends of Troy Seniors, and there's been a lot of good discussion, and I was planning to prepare a little bit more to discuss that tonight, and then I thought better of it in light of an otherwise full agenda, and I will talk a little bit more about that maybe at our next meeting, but it was very preliminary to start out. Let me just let you know, everybody, but they definitely, I think this would, a project such as this would be beneficial for all of us as we look at things down the line and how it may affect budgeting or may affect just the direction of the city as we move forward. I will also say that one takeaway I have from my initial meeting with the group is that some of the asks they have are not big asks. They're not looking for 10 new senior employees and $100 million, let's just say. I think some simple changes given from some policy direction from us at a certain point could then be implemented by staff in a way that may actually be very beneficial. And I guess I'll also say on that topic, and my intent has been all along that when I do meet with that group, there's opportunity for one other council member at times to join in if the scheduling permits, just to get a feel, and to also certainly this is not something I can take on all by myself or handle all by myself as one of 7, but I can use my role to help facilitate, so that's the plan. So stay tuned for more information on that, but I think you have consensus from up here. And Councilmember Chamberlain-Carga?
Just as a clarifying question, I thought it was the last budget or recent budget, we approved a new position to focus on senior services out of the Troy Community Center. Could you remind me? Did we approve that in which year?
I don't recall. We'll have to look into
And I
that.
hope that would be part of the study. It's just how is that working? What more does that need? Because we have, as a council, made decisions to.
Absolutely. And I do know that Lindsay is the senior services coordinator there now, and she has been very well received by many Troy seniors and friends of Troy seniors as well. And so that was a good hire.
Yeah,
I'll just say that.
Yeah,
That's
I
been the
wanted to
feedback
second
I've
that.
heard.
Yeah, I heard the same thing, so.
Yeah, it's definitely been a good step in the right direction. So looking forward to seeing some of that comparative analysis and as we continue our long-term planning for how we can handle some of maybe the capital needs, but how we also can do some short-term tweaks that maybe could help as well.
Mayor?
Yep.
Yeah, I just want to add, I'm really interested in like the budgetary differences, you know, amongst other communities. I know like Rochester Hills, they have dedicated senior millage, so obviously, and we have, as one resident mentioned, we have one of the lowest tax rates in Oakland County. So, you know, they have more resources to start, but I'd really like to see where those differences are, what it would cost to, you know, address some of those changes. And we do a lot. I mean, my mom goes to the dinner, or to the lunches every week, so, at community center, so. But, you know, I think it's a good discussion. And I'd like to join one of those meetings.
Yeah, actually I might too, yeah. So, yeah, I wanted to make sure that, you know, some of the things are really what Mayor Becker said. I mean, it is low-hanging fruit. You can just take care of it now. With one of the things I think they were looking for a little bit more help for Lindsay, I think, once in a while, you know, so that's something we could be done even within the current framework of what we have. But there are other things that could take a while. I mean, that could take some budgetary consideration. So I would also like to join if possible. And I have been meeting with Friends of Troy Seniors, Bill Rhodes, for a couple of times. And I think it's worth doing it, you know, because all of us went through campaigns. And I think development is the number one cause. And number two, I think I heard, is senior services. So those are the two things we discussed today. So thanks. Yeah, thanks for, you know, having a consensus on this, and I appreciate that.
Sure thing. I will add to City Manager Miller, just as a heads up, there's a big concern that Lindsay won't be given the resources she needs, whatever that may be, and she won't be able to do as well as she's capable of doing. So if you could put that somewhere in your bank of knowledge as a concern, or as at least a potential concern. All right. Next up are reports. Any comments on any of the reports? I figured. Councilmember Hamilton?
Yeah, I just want to briefly mention the fire department summary. Thank you for this. I appreciate this information. Particularly great to see 6 new academy graduates, and that our total firefighters is up to 133. I know we're keeping our eyes on this as the change in the volunteer incentive plan occurred last year, and we're seeing how the new plan is going. But it seems like we're on the right track, so I'm glad to see that. And I appreciate that there's going to be an effort to provide more regular updates to the council, so it's good to see that.
Well put. Anything else? No? Next up are council comments. I actually pre-printed one. It's in there. State of the City address will be on Wednesday, May 8th. Time and place to be determined. The language is more flowery than that, but you get the point. So, Councilor Brooks?
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so I am going to start out by saying, once again, Happy Black History Month. Normally, I don't say it more than once in the month. But there were some comments that were made during public comment at the last city council meeting that have prompted me to say it again. There are clearly individuals, both within our community and outside of our community, who still lack an understanding of the history of Black people in this country, including our struggles and our ongoing challenges. And such comments basically highlight the importance of continuing to recognize events such as Black History Month and the cultural events that happen in our community. Because it's not just our history, it's really all of our shared history. And so I think it's important for people to recognize and understand that. And then I also just wanted to say that, for the past 2 months, we have had individuals from a similar community coming before us, sharing their pain. And I do want you to know that we do hear you, as we've all said it, actually, not just the mayor, but we've all said it. We do hear you, and we recognize you, and we see you. And all of us care deeply about our community, everyone in our community. That's why we were elected, and that's why we serve in this seat, is because we care. And so even though we may not be issuing a formal proclamation, I want you to know that you are recognized and that your voice matters. And even though we may not be issuing a proclamation, I hope that your words may inspire somebody to reach out to somebody who's different from them and start a conversation. Because I believe that those person-to-person interactions are really where change starts to happen and where people can really start to see the humanity in each other. And so I really do challenge everybody, including myself, to really get out of our comfort zone and get out of our echo chamber and really have those conversations with each other. Because I do believe that that's what's important, not only for personal growth, but I believe it's vital for the betterment of our community. So hopefully, at least, those conversations can start.
Thank you, Councilmember Brooks. Additional council comments? Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate that. And the proclamation policy that we changed, we no longer do a Black History Month proclamation either. We did a proclamation for the Oxford school shooting before our policy change. When the school shooting at MSU happened, we didn't do a proclamation because our policy had changed. For sure, there had been lots of people in the community affected by both shootings in our neighboring cities and with family members and Spartans. And when you have U of M lighting up things green on behalf of MSU at the time, there was an acknowledgement of pain, but we didn't do a proclamation then. So as you were talking, it hit me that the double standard that was referenced, or do we not see you or we see you differently? No, we changed our policy, and we changed it for really good reason. Experientially, it was not serving our community. A proclamation that was well-intended, if the words weren't just so, there would be somebody who would take issue. We'd make some people happy and others not. We have so many communities of people in this city that we care for, that we love, that we want to feel secure, that we want to feel seen and safe and understood. Albanians, friends I have, and the pain that they're experiencing, and as they watch, the suggestion that it's a proclamation that demonstrates care and love, when I hope it would be that our actions as a council body, which are to step into these situations, and we did immediately on this situation, we joined a group to pray, and it was an interfaith group. We prayed for Palestinians, we prayed for Israelis, we prayed for the entire situation and for peace. There were cries for peace and for understanding of one another in those prayers. The mayor represented council, members of council were also there. And you don't always get to see our actions. And I understand that. But it occurred to me, as Councilwoman Brooks was speaking, when you were first on, we used to do a Black History Month proclamation. That's another one that we don't do anymore. We determined that the best use of proclamations in our city council in our city, and this is not unlike many cities, is to focus on specific city events, actions that were unique to us, because if we don't do it, no one else is gonna. And we needed to focus our energy there, and that we were best served to do that. Now you are stepping, or folks that were speaking stepped in here looking for something from us that we no longer do, for very good reason. And I am so sad that it adds to your pain, and I don't know how to say, please don't add that, don't let that add to your pain. Because I know all 7 of us up here care very deeply. We're very informed. We're watching. It is one of the things I'm losing sleep over. I have children, I have grandchildren. I imagine and try to walk in the shoes all the time. And I agree that that whole effort, that what we can be doing here with one another is continuing to dialogue. Continue to come talk to us and share your pain. We are here to listen and to understand. I will be celebrating Ramadan in some form coming in the coming months. A tradition that's become part of my life because of living here, and I welcome that opportunity. I celebrate Diwali. I've been to the synagogue. I've been to the Hindu temple. That's not just me. This is kind of who we are as people and why we want to serve as your council members. I hope you can hear that care and understanding. And I'm sorry if you don't. I don't know that that even a proclamation is going to alleviate pain. But I hope knowing that the people that are working on the business of the city and making sure we deliver what we can control here to the best of our ability, and the fact that we're prioritizing that matters too, and can demonstrate to you how much we do care.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Hoderick. All right, that concludes council comments. Now it's time for public comment for items on or not on the agenda from members of the public outside of Troy, not residents of Troy, and not from Troy businesses. Same rules apply. We do have a handful of people signed up as well. First up is Rola Bazoun.
Good evening. This City Council's purpose is to address the health, safety, and the welfare concerns of its community. If there's a proclamation that is somehow getting at the welfare of a community group that is suffering, it should be addressed. Because of what is happening globally, it's impacting people locally. The people whom you serve need to know that they are cared for. When their welfare is under attack or they are struggling, it is important for a City Council to say, "We stand with you." Do these words sound familiar? I ask because City Council Troy, these are your words on a much less horrific war. There may not be as many Arab Americans in Troy as Ukrainians, but there have been far more grotesque war crimes committed in the 4 days it took to pass the Ukrainian proclamation, let alone on the 135th day today. But the number of Arab Americans is not what the City Council should take into consideration. The Council needs to understand it currently only opposes a white-collar war crime like what we see in Ukraine, and not the deliberate annihilation of people with the use of starvation and cattle pushing like we see with Palestinians. Right now, it only opposes the killing of 1,800 Ukrainian children and not the over 12,000 Palestinian children killed or 10,000 orphaned. Right now, it only opposes a war that uses weaponry and battle tanks from the 1970s, but does not oppose an AI killing machine that drops 2,000-pound bunker bombs on homes with programming that prioritizes destruction over accuracy. As a person who spent her childhood weeknights in the Troy Public Library, at the Aquatic Center, who volunteered at Troy Days and blood drives, whose parents loved Troy so much that she got to go to Bemis, Hamilton, and Smith, I ask you to uphold your duty to represent the people you serve as your counterpart cities have done. The response from the council that references city rules or regrets on past proclamations reminds us of what I hear when I see an ineffective and hypocritical Congress. Rules have and can be waived, and the city of Troy is a part of a legislative system put in place to communicate to the elected leaders what their constituents want. This war is being executed with the most advanced technology and in turn yielding unimaginable accelerated consequences. When we don't acknowledge and oppose these consequences, we accept the dehumanization of Palestinians, which in turn dehumanizes me and you. Passing this proclamation is perceived to be the most human thing that this city council can do. We are telling you our welfare is under attack, we are struggling, and we want the City Council to say, we stand with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Ian McClure.
Hello, Council. My name is Ian. I live just steps south of the border in the very northern tip of Royal Oak. So these people who are here speaking today are also my neighbors as they are yours. I want to first acknowledge what everyone has said about sort of the shared emotion and empathy in all of this. I too share that feeling, but I think the reason that everyone's here today is not to simply express their grief, but in an attempt to try to change the world around them and end this genocide. And what that takes is not, emotional connection. What it takes is power to act. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about 3 different kinds of power briefly, and I hope you'll bear with me. The first one is the power you have. It may seem that a city council like this doesn't have a ton of control over foreign affairs, but you do have the power to set the tone. You are an elected body that represents everyone that lives in this city. You are the political will of the people. And when you speak, it carries a pretty significant weight. Just think about how, Haley Stevens, who's been referenced a lot, feels as she sees more and more communities in her district passing resolutions in favor of a ceasefire. And we can quibble about whether, the semantics of ending the killing are meaningfully different from a ceasefire, but that's besides the point. I think it sets an example and shows her that she is not in step with the people she represents. The second type of power, I think, and so the first type of power represents why you should pass a ceasefire resolution. The second type of power is one of the reasons maybe that you're not. You all ran to be on this body, and that's an admirable thing. And I imagine some of you would want to go even further with your careers. I think that's a normal urge for people to have. And so, simply put, it's usually not a very good career political move to go against Israel in this country. If you were to run for higher office, having passed something like this, you might face a lot of money from AIPAC and DMFI and these sorts of things. But, not to completely undercut my own point, I'm going to go to the third type of power, which is, I hope, greater than that second power, and that's really the power of the majority. We know that a majority of Americans, Republicans and Democrats alike, support calls for an immediate ceasefire, and so I would say that if you stand with us now, we will not forget. And then to touch on another couple points of power, I think, or it's clear, you guys have even acknowledged this, you have the power to set the rules of this body. That's one of the jobs of the body, and so the rules are at your disposal. And I think a rule that says you can't pass a Black History Month proclamation every year is a pretty bad rule. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up is Monica Sipe.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I'm here again about the 25 acres of trees at Long Lake and Crooks. I'm asking the city to consider trying to purchase the acreage from the landowners. It would save the last remaining natural area in Troy. The benefit of trees and natural space is immeasurable. Trees in urban areas make people healthier and happier. The City of Troy's residents, per last year's master plan survey, said natural environment is a top priority, and it aligns with the city's efforts for sustainability. And as the sign on the property says, River Rouge watershed, ours to protect. Some of the sources of funding that I thought of was, I guess with this current climate, with the challenging commercial real estate market, I don't know if the landowners might be open to negotiating a purchase, but that might be a consideration. Maybe a deal could be made where they could donate part of it for tax purposes. The Michigan DNR has grants like the Natural Resources Trust Fund that purchases property. And then I don't know if all the ARPA funds have been allocated for the year, but they're expiring this year, December 31st. It's the last concrete, or not concrete, that's a bad word. It's the last section of trees that it's a complete ecosystem. I mean, there's deer that live there. A friend of mine said she saw a fox there. There's flocks of songbirds that come during their migration process. And it would be such a shame to see the trees come down one by one. I know they'd need permission to do the complete clear cutting, but I'm hoping that you could consider purchasing the property. I can't, these are my reading glasses. One thing I found interesting, urban forests offer substantial benefits, including less extreme heat, the heat island effect. And then also a study in Toronto found that trees on a city block improve people's perceptions of their health of being 7 years younger. The other thing I'd like to note is in Royal Oak, there's 2 nature preserves, and so that could be an idea that the city could utilize that instead of the park concept where people can, where it's for games and things. It could be more natural, have trails and things. So
thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming forward. Next up is Masood Hossain.
Hey, peace be upon you all. My name is Masood Hussain, and I just live on your neighboring city, Shelby Township, just exactly on the border, South Boulevard and Ryan Road. You have already heard what the Troy residents want in regarding this Palestine issue. As a Michigan resident who do not live in Troy and in your neighboring city, we always look up to city of Troy, not because of your expensive real estate property or those big houses, but because of your value and gesture, because of the good school district, because of the diversity, because of the inclusion. And the diversity and inclusion can be seen in this city council itself, among the members. So just one request, please keep that standard high. Okay, please don't let it down. You know what the residents want. And please reconsider your thought. Whatever you decide, please remember those 14,000 children who were killed for no reason, innocent children who doesn't even have enough maturity to decide, and they were not Hamas. Not at all. They were not Hamas, they were no soldier, they had nothing to do with the war. They deserve to live. All lives matter. Just how Black life matters, Palestine life also matters. That's what I just wanted to say. Thank you, sir. May Almighty God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Ray McCarris. Nathan Zhang. Leila Babul.
Good evening. Just piggybacking off of all the residents that already came before you today about the Palestinian issue, I stand before you today with a heavy heart and a plea for action. The ongoing genocide in Palestine demands our immediate attention and intervention. Despite the policy change that you keep bringing up, we can change the policies again. As representatives of our community, we have a moral obligation to speak out against injustice and advocate for the protection of innocent lives. For decades, the Palestinian people have endured systematic oppression, violence, and displacement at the hands of the Israeli government. Their basic human rights have been continuously violated, their homes demolished, their land confiscated, and their communities torn apart. The recent escalation of violence in Gaza and the West Bank has only exacerbated this humanitarian crisis, resulting in the loss of countless lives, including innocent women and children, as you all already know. It is imperative that we, as a city council, take a stand against this injustice and demand an end to the genocide in Palestine. We must call upon our government officials at the state and federal levels to exert diplomatic pressure on Israel to cease its illegal occupation of Palestinian land and adhere to international law. Furthermore, we must support initiatives that promote peace, justice, and reconciliation between Israelis and Palestinians. Dialogue, like you've mentioned, negotiation, and mutual respect are the only paths to a sustainable and just resolution to this conflict. We must condemn all forms of violence and discrimination, regardless of the perpetrators, and work towards a future where all people in the region can live in peace and dignity. As residents of Troy, which I was for 20 years, I went to school, Troy High School grad, very proud of that. I want to continue to be proud of that. We have the power to make a difference by raising our voices, advocating for human rights, and supporting initiatives that promote justice and equality. We can contribute to the efforts to end the genocide in Palestine, create a better world for future generations, the generations of your children and grandchildren. I urge the Troy City Council to take a bold and principled stance on this issue, to stand on the right side of history, and to lend our support to the Palestinian people in their quest for freedom, justice, and equality. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
That concludes those that have signed up for public comment for items on or not on the agenda from members of the public outside of Troy, not residents of Troy, and not from Troy businesses. We have no closed session this evening, so we're adjourned.